Hold a second, I need to get my phone out. I have to read a couple comments. One second. You can start. I just need to find my phone for a couple comments.
Good evening. I'd like to call the King George County Board of Supervisors Tuesday, January 16th, 2024 to order, please.
I call to order the King George Service Authority Board of Directors.
Mr. Davis, can you please lead us in the invocation?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time to come together. We thank you this time, dear God, especially for the fact we come together as free men, that we live in a country where government doesn't give us our freedom, but out of our freedom, dear God, we create a government. Dear God, we ask you that we have wisdom tonight, we have foresight, and that we listen to you, and that you lead us today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any amendments to the King George County Board of Supervisors agenda? Seeing none, Ms. Bender?
Is there any amendments to the King George Service Authority Board of Directors agenda? All right, seeing none. Move back to you, Mr. Collins.
Thank you. Public comment for the King George Board of Supervisors and the King George Service Authority. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. And in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak, please provide your full name and your district when submitting your public comments so they can be properly included in the record. I have before me for public comment for the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Bob Beard.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I want to thank you for your efforts here today. It's all greatly appreciated. That being said, I'd like to draw your attention to a couple of different things. First, our county is suffering for a shortage of starter and mid-level homes at price levels affordable to entry-level and mid-range personnel. Such homes might be, for example, apartments, duplexes, homes of smaller footage or less acreage. In today's environment, land costs, zoning, restrictions, and labor and construction costs tend to encourage people to build larger homes. We need to figure out how to reach all the people by addressing the mid and lower range homes some kind of way. That's a zoning issue. Secondly, it appears to me that the interpretation of the existing regulations regarding existing mobile home parks appears to be burdensome for park owners and aim further to reduce the availability of such small and starter homes by preventing the park owners to replace existing units that need to be upgraded, or where the lot owners wish to move to other parks. Having lived in a mobile home purchased from an existing park in the county and moved into private land, and having personally helped in the development and maintenance of 2 other parks in the county, I have some experience with the importance of having that type of community and lifestyle available. Thirdly, it appears that the consulting firm working on the new zoning ordinance did not fully understand some of the intent of the interrelationships of certain paragraphs of zoning regulations and understand relationships with the ordinance to the zoning maps. It's my understanding they indicated that the zoning maps did not change. However, a detailed review of the maps in conjunction with the text indicates that the overall requirements of zoning did in fact change what existing landowners would be permitted to do with their property, such as in relationship between aspects of C1 and C2 classifications, particularly related to multi-tenant properties. These issues are complex and require careful consideration. And from discussions I've had with several others, I believe the ordinance requires a lot more work by the planning committee and board and time for consideration by the consensus of our county prior to that final implementation. I would hope, therefore, the board would undertake to pass a further motion to delay final implementation to ensure that everyone has the time to further review the proposed ordinance to ensure we have a final product that best serves our county's needs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Anthony Stats.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Stats. I live at 9007 Clare Street. I first want to read a comment I have got from a citizen, and the comment is as followed, quote, now that you are the at-large member of the Budget Advisory Committee, I would like to make a request. I would like the details of all the county and service authority indebtedness. We are paying $8 million per year towards indebtedness for the county. I want the answers to these questions. 1, what are the interest rates on each of the bonds? 2, what are the projects covered? 3, how long until they are paid off? 4, how much is the principal and how much is the interest? This is from someone who lives in the county. I think these are very good questions. Other comments I had the honor of being with Hillary Pugh Kent as she got sworn in earlier this past weekend. It was phenomenal to see our state representative get sworn in. I wish all of Senator Stewart included, all of our state players who have just gotten elected for a new term well. I had a very good phone call with Green Energy Renewable, who want to build a proposed solar farm here in King George. They seem like to be a really good player. Have a couple questions still about the size of the project, the road they want to build on. I think though that they are one of the good players in the county, and I would ask the county to open up the process on the next county administrator. What's that process look like, and what's the time frame? Thank you.
Anyone receive any comments? Mr. Sullins.
Thank you, sir. Excuse me. This is from Sarah Southworth, 5718 Cove Harbor Drive, King George, Virginia. I would like to comment on permanently changing over 800 acres of rural prime King George County farmland and woodland into a vast, noisy paved building and site. In exchange for permanently destroying our rural homeland, exactly how many new jobs will be created and what type of job? Will these jobs be for King George County residents only who would be making the sacrifice of their peaceful, natural rural homes? Are jobs only IT specialist jobs? Automation, not personnel, usually runs data centers. Obsolescence. Average data center is obsolete in 7 years. 800 acres of wildlife habitat and farmland is a huge sacrifice for only 7 years. Wildlife. What considerations have been given to the displacement and annihilation of natural wildlife in this area? How will constant noise affect the wildlife in the land adjacent to this center? King George residents chose to live in this rural county because of the peaceful quiet, the natural woodlands, to live amongst the wildlife, which is now absent in many other communities. We cannot recapture the rural life we now have once this vast area is destroyed. Electricity. Data centers use as much electricity as a small town. Northern Neck Power Plant is an oil plant generating 83 megawatts. What is the projected data center electrical demand? The data center's electrical demand will cause a substantial increase in burning fossil fuels to create this increased demand for electricity. Our power grid is taxed during the hot and cold weather. How would the demands of this data center affect our availability of electricity, especially during high demands? Will we experience rolling blackouts in order to keep the data center cool and operational? Water usage. The Rappahannock River has recently had record low water levels. Many King George residents depend upon subterranean water aqueducts for their water supply. Data centers need millions of gallons of precious water. Heat generation. Destroying over 800 acres of green land for parking, buildings, equipment, and powerful backup generators, etc., will increase atmospheric heat. Noise is measured in decibels. Each increase in decibel is twice as loud, not merely a little increase in volume as when slowly turning up the volume on a radio. Presently, our average nighttime background noise is 10 dB. Data centers create constant 24/7 noise described as high-pitched, whirring noises like a jet plane about to take off. The average noise level in the server is about 92 to 96 dB. Manassas residents have been protesting the noise from their Amazon data center. People, children, and babies can't sleep. The noise is causing migraines, autoimmune systems issues, increased stress, anger, cardiac issues, and other health issues. Nearby residents 2 miles away are moving their bedrooms into the basement to sleep. The county changed their noise ordinance to accommodate their data center. Tax revenues there rules over the residents' quality of life. Will King George County make the same mistake? And there's a reference to section 10-8 of the noise ordinance, and I think well, you didn't start the clock. Got it. That's the gist of it.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
I'll send this over to Mr. Dines to include in the minutes.
Okay.
Like, was that?
Do you have anything online?
Yeah, I had the same one, and Mr. Stallings already sent it to Miss Fish, because I think all of us got it. And I did have one for the Service Authority. Tristan Beverly. Did I get that right?
Hello. My name is Tristan Beverly, and I'm the president of King George County Professional Firefighters and Paramedics IFF Local 4438 for 2024. Local 4438 consists of full-time career employees of King George County Department of Fire Rescue and Emergency Services. I'm in attendance at this evening's meeting to introduce myself and provide some high-level goals that we feel will enhance the capabilities and further the mission of King George County Department of Fire Rescue and Emergency Services. Chairman Collins and Vice Chairman Bender, congratulations on your respective appointments on the board. We look forward to working with all of you this year. One of the items that we'd like to work on is having adequate full-time staffing of apparatus to ensure we have well-trained and enough personnel to provide the level of service the citizens and visitors of our county deserve. It's no secret that volunteers in the fire service are a dwindling population due to increasing training requirements and busy family life. This is not to discredit anyone who has been or is a volunteer firefighter or EMT or paramedic. I and many of my colleagues got our start in the fire service through volunteering. We'd also like to work on having fair, competitive, and equal pay for every employee in the county. Since its implementation, our step and grade pay scale has been a great recruitment and retention tool, and it is standard in the public safety industry. While the pay may not be the main issue, having a shortfall in personnel results in more overtime and employee burnout, having to work more on top of the 24-hour shifts that we already currently work, costing the county more money. This leaves our members with no time to recover from busy shifts and less time with their families. We, the King George County professional firefighters and paramedics, are excited about the potential that exists for our growing county. We know that our residents rely on our fire rescue and emergency services. We owe it to every resident and visitor to deliver the highest quality fire rescue and emergency services when they call 911. It's our job to keep King George safe, and you can be assured that going forward we will work with county officials to keep it that way so that we can all enjoy King George County's progress together safely. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak?
Hi. Hi, my name is Ana Maria Lobo. I live in Presidential Lakes. Tonight, I want to thank you for the job that you are just started. It's not going to be easy, but I think you will do a good job. If you work together and remember that you are working for the people of King George and the county, you need to be transparent and let the people know what are you doing. You need to be working to reduce the county debt. I would like also to know what happened to Mr. Miller and the county lawyer. I would also like to know who is responsible for paying the county bills, because I don't think they are doing a good job. An increase in the Moody's rating of the county is not a good reason to spend more money. They shouldn't be paying down the principal of the county debt as well as the interest. That is the only way that we are going to get out of debt. We can't keep spending money we don't have it. Will be great if the county did not owe so much money, because the people of King George County will have to pay the consequences. It's so easy to spend money, it's not yours. I also would like to know what happened to the $600,000 that the county gave it to the broadband. And I want to know that what Verizon wants to do in the county. I have Verizon internet service in the past, but it was very slow. That is why I use BridgeLine now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here tonight? Mr. Dines, is anyone online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll close public comment. Reports to members of the board. Mr. Davis first, please.
Well, first, I'd like to say thank you for everyone coming out. I appreciate it. It takes a lot to be involved in the community, from school boards, everything else, to really be involved, and most people don't do it, so thanks for being here. To Mr. Bob Bear, you're right about the fact, I'd like to call them starter homes. We don't have enough starter homes here for people that graduate in high school, go to college, come back home, want to live here. And that's something that I am addressing. I'm talking to certain developers about things like that right now. As Anthony Stats, as far as the solar farm, I got a chance to speak with them too. They seem like I'm not so much sure that I'm a big gung-ho solar farm guy, but I will listen to people who sound like they want to be good partners with us and don't want to come in and just run us over. And I get to spend a great deal talking to them. I'm going to be meeting with them soon to see what their plans are. And as long as, the residents that are surrounding the area have a good understanding of what's happening, that's really, like, anyone who wants to come here, just to be upfront with all of you, anyone who comes to me and pitches me a deal, I'm willing to consider it and talk about it. But at the end of the day, they got to sell you. They got to convince you that they're going to be good partners with our community. They got to convince you that they're on our side, that they're not coming to take advantage of us. That's the most important thing. Can they convince you of it? And are your questions getting answered? Are they going to be a good partner for us? Was it Mrs. Southward? Is that who you said? South Hall? And she brought up the database. And to be honest with you, I'd say it. Southward? Southworth. Yes. Okay. So a lot of the concerns she brought with the database were a lot of the things that is why we kind of rejected the performance agreement, because it didn't feel like it was a good partnership with our community. It didn't feel like we were being put first. It felt like they were here and we were here and we needed them and they didn't need us. And I don't know what kind of relationship you can be in your life where you need them and they don't need you. Any relationship that's healthy, whether it's employment or whatever, no, it's never a healthy situation to put yourself in. And so we're looking for people who actually want to partner with us. I mean, she talked about bringing jobs here. Some of the writing in the performance agreement, it's all you guys have privy to information, was bringing new jobs to King George County. Well, that's very vague. That's lawyer talk for bringing people here, but it doesn't say providing jobs for King George residents, which is some of the terminology, the things that we want to see change. That's part of that. We're in the negotiating process now. So I'm not going to get into any more details about that, but a lot of things she brought up are things that we are looking to renegotiate, because we want to do business with people who want to do business with us, but they want to be partners with us at the end of the day. And I hope that that's what you guys get from us, and we're available to all of you, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Stroud?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ditto on what Mr. Davis said. Everybody that spoke, thank you for speaking. Mr. Baird, concur. There are a lot of things that need to be looked at and worked out with the zoning. There are a lot of good things with it, but that's not a good one that we need to work on. Mr. Stats, ditto there. I'm the same way with solar farms. I don't really care to look at them, and they benefit us, but I prefer to have them out of sight. They contacted me as well, and I think they do have a good plan. If it's the same ones that are going to be out in the Shiloh district, I believe. Yeah, so I think they have a pretty good plan. Regarding Ms. Southworth and the data center, I think a lot of the things that were brought up in there will be mitigated. She referenced a lot of the up north data centers, and it's just the data centers don't have to exhibit all the things that were brought up. So I've also went to data centers, looked at them. I've helped with building some, and those issues can be mitigated. But they do bring a good source of income to the county. It's just how you negotiate the deal. Regarding the jobs, I agree with Mr. Davis there. Data centers don't bring a lot of jobs, not in operation. The jobs are whenever the data center is being built. But once they're built, then the jobs are pretty negligible. But we want to have as many as possible of those jobs being performed by King George residents. We want to bring revenue to the county and keep it here. So I think we're working on that. That's all I've got to say now, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Stroud. Mr. Sullins?
I want to once again thank everybody for coming out tonight and thank the folks that have made public comment and also for Ms. Southport for providing the information. I'm not going to rehash everything that's been said so far. Just suffice it to say that I echo the sentiments on most of those things. I will touch base on the solar farm just a little bit. At my core, I don't like them. I mean, they're not my favorite thing in the world. They're just ugly. But I will say that I had a very nice conversation with Mr. Gilchrist last week, the week before. I was impressed with what he had to say. At least it makes me want to open my ears and listen. I'm not going into it with I don't like them, go away. They're very much involved. They want to engage in the community. There's going to be no, well, I don't want to make promises about that, but all indications so far is there's going to be no backdoor stuff back there talking. It's all going to be out in the community. They want to have town hall meetings. They want to go door to door and meet with folks and tell you what they're trying to do. So they're telling me stuff that at least makes me want to hear more about it at this point without shutting them down. So it's a possibility. Other stuff, over the weekend, I got to meet with Mr. Gary Kendrick and Mr. Ian Fox. We talked about thoughts on the Amazon Web Services data center. We shared some information on other development proposals that are coming to the county that for different folks that reached out last week. We also discussed some thoughts on reducing the size of the Planning Commission from 10 members to 5 members. That's something that we've been talking amongst ourselves about. Got their perspective on that. Was kind of cool. And we talked about some general thoughts on the Planning Commission and our collective goals because Mr. Kendrick, his term is coming to an end. So he wanted to make sure that, his thoughts and ideas are aligned with mine, as did Mr. Fox. I very much enjoyed meeting with them. I like the fact that we have our ideas more or less aligned. And I would like to nominate Mr. Kendrick for another term on the Planning Commission. And then the last piece is Mr. Stroud and I have a meeting tomorrow with Mr. Roberts from the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance to learn more about that organization and what our role is in it. So I would like to make a nomination that Mr. Kendrick.
Nomination, is there a second?
Second.
Probably second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, once again, I want to bring up, we haven't decided what we're doing with the Planning Commission and appointing members to it or reappointing. I'm just going to bring that up. I mean, if that is the one in the desire, I hope we could bring that up on the next agenda that we make a decision on the Planning Commission. I just don't want to appoint members if we're going to then rearrange it right after. I don't think that's fair to the members.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, I had nominated someone last week, and that was our last meeting. That's what we decided to do, and nothing against the gentleman. I'm sure he's great, but if we need to wait to see what we're going to do as far as what that reorganization looks like, and then maybe move that to an agenda very soon.
Ms. Fish, can you get on the next agenda? And also invite the Planning Commission, please. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Wait a minute, we're making a motion on appointing somebody.
And it was properly seconded.
Okay.
And we had discussion, and now it's a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Mr. Chair, make a perfecting change to that, and in doing so, that we delay this until after we have the discussion that was brought up, like at the next meeting. So we need to look at the other members, and if any of them are planning on retiring or voluntarily getting off the board before we have the vote. Is that possible?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr.
So you're in the middle of a vote, call on a vote, and unfortunately you need to finish that. But Mr. Stroud is correct. If I understand it, there are 9 members now currently serving. 1 is not. You're going to lose 3 by attrition this year, which leaves you 6. And I think you wanted to get to 5. So based upon the natural attrition on that committee, you'll have 6. You may want to take this up, but at this point, you've got a motion to appoint him, you've either got to vote him up or down, unfortunately, because you're in the middle of the vote.
That's correct. Got one A. Any nays?
I said nay.
I vote in favor of. Aye.
I'll vote in favor of.
That's three. He's appointed.
Mr. Collins, I just want to say I like Mr. Kendrick. I'm just trying to make sure we do it right. So
Ms. Bender, your report.
thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And then I'll get our new Board of Director member after my, if that is okay with you, Chair Collins. So a lot of things to unpack. Basically, that's sort of a young person word. Mr. Stats would understand that. I thank everybody coming out here to give public comment. There was a lot of issues addressed, and I'm just going to give from my perspective. I appreciate your name was Mr. Beverly, correct? Coming from the firefighters, it's nice to see a new face. Great getting to talk to you in the future and hear what your path is for the union and your concerns about the fire and rescue. But I wanted to bring up, since I'm kind of stepped into the role as being the face of the service authority right now, and I'm going to reiterate to the public, is I'm looking for solutions to finally, to the best of our ability, solve the problem that is the King George Service Authority. And earlier today, Mr. Collins and I met with the BOD team to just talk about some issues, and they're going to give us some concerns and a timeline of things we need to address and look at so that we stay in compliance. And I appreciate them taking their time and their willingness to help us finally set it on the right track. And so we're trying to find a path forward. And I know Mr. Sullins and I are going to be touring all the wastewater facilities on Thursday, and Mr. Davis and I will be touring the water facilities on Friday so that I can get an eyes on. I haven't seen most of them in about 2 years, and I encourage everybody else to reach out through. You can reach out to me and we can hook you up with them both so you can see all the facilities too when you have time. I think it's eye-opening. But what I am just trying to say is, as with the data center, discussion and how long I fought for that, I would like to make sure that we put the service authority to the best of our ability and find a way and a path forward, whether that is we sell it or bring it into the county, we continue our relationship in BOD, and we just got to do the right thing for the customers and the citizens of King George. And I know I am going to try to do that. I never expected to be in this role, but I'm taking it on with gusto and learning even more than I ever wanted to about water treatment plants and wastewater and all the chemicals that are in. I thought I knew everything, but I didn't, because I just read the Hop Yard report from what we have to do to bring it up to speed to incorporate Perkins and Oakland. And I do have concerns, especially with the Amazon data project, with our making sure that King George and the citizens have water to drink and not the iRobot can run. So that was the end of my comments. Thank you. And then I know I wrote this down, so let me make sure I get this right. Mr. Lee Robotham. Did I get that right? Close enough?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for coming out, and appreciate all of your time. And I'd like to echo what Ms. Bender said. I think she hit the nail on the head when it comes to the Board of Directors. I would like to encourage, future and more participation in all things related to the Board of Directors and the Service Authority. As a citizen and a customer of the Service Authority, I believe that this is a issue that we need to take the reins for and handle, along with doing our due diligence to make sure that we do it right, to where we don't incur more debt and continue to be a burden on the county. So I would encourage more and others to come out in the future. But other than that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for coming out this evening. As chairman of the board, one of my responsibilities is to push out information to the board members and also the public. So since January 2nd, the board members have received an unbelievable amount of documents for them to review. As chairman of the board and chairman of the Water Authority, we met with BOD just before this meeting, and we went over some things that affects the board county board and the board of directors. They will be giving us information very soon, and we will pass it, or I will pass it to the rest of the members of the board as soon as they produce that information. Budget work sessions. Need a consensus from the board on what nights to hold those. I was suggesting Wednesday, since that's what they did last year. Are you folks amenable to Wednesdays? Any discussion?
I'm good with Wednesdays, Mr. Chair.
And time, 5:30, good?
Yes, sir.
We'll schedule our next work session for next week on the budget. Thank you, Ms. Fish. When the other supervisors were speaking about the solar and so forth, the most important with any project that happens in King George is that we need to have our citizens buy in. That's the number one. What the project is, it matters, but we need buy-in from everyone in the county so we know we're all going to go forward. So whether it's solar, whether it's whatever, that's what we're looking for. Mr. Stats, your constituent didn't really have the information correct. I'll just correct it in public. It's $139 million for the county debt and $35 million for the service authority debt. So you can pass that on to them, please. Mr. Beard, so we've already, last meeting we had some folks that own mobile home parks come and let us know what the problems are there. And that is being worked on by the community development and the county attorney. So we will bring these things forward as we get them. We'll solve the problems and we'll move forward. There's a lot of problem with the ordinances that they were approved by 3-2, I believe. And so we're going to revisit some of those, and all the board members, I'm sure you're getting, folks are mentioning to you. Can you just give them to me so we make sure that we get all those problems taken care of and move forward with that? King George Professional Firefighters Association, Christian. Yes, staffing has been a big problem with the fire department, where folks are having burnout and overtime, and a lot of overtime, which costs the county. So that is one thing that we need to work on heavily this year in the budget cycle. And the equal pay, that just doesn't go with the firefighters or the folks that work for the fire department. That pretty much goes with everybody in the county. So we're going to work on all these issues. We are drinking out of a fire hose at this point, and we will solve these problems. So I thank everyone for coming out. I thank everybody online. And do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There was aye. Thank you. Ms. Bender?
Yes, since we're going to roll into the service authority portion of the program, and I thank Ms. Fish for her helping us cobble together, combining them both, her putting together. I really appreciate it, because I'm hoping this works out, because I think it's going to pass forward and move it along a little quicker. But Mr. Stroud, since we're moving to the board of directors, can I ask you to sit in the audience just for the board of directors portion? Thank you very much. All right, can I have a motion for the consent agenda for the board of directors?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion made, properly seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next on, we have in Bowdoin Environmental Services, Mr. Mark Bowdoin. He's going to give us a presentation. I want to thank them Bowdoin once again for meeting with us earlier and coming up with more information that we're going to distribute to the Board of Directors and the Board of Supervisors. Floor is all yours.
My name is Mark Bowdoin. I am the CEO of Bowdoin Environmental Services. Our company has been around for 30 years, and I do not look that old. Our company was founded by my father, Terry Bowdoin, in 1993, and we're a growing company. We're a fast-growing company with about 70 people in our organization right now, and we provide contract operations and utility management for utility infrastructure across the Commonwealth. King George County, we've been involved with your utilities for a little while now, but we have recently taken over and assumed the role of operating responsible charge and providing contract operations as of April of 2023. And so a lot of the issues that we face are kind of historical in basis, but as we work through them, and I do want to thank Ms. Binder and Mr. Collins for your meeting earlier today. It's very encouraging to get that feedback from you guys and support from the board. It's always important for individuals in our role to know that we're supported from the board, and we're supported from the community. So that was very helpful. So thank you. So we provide monthly utility reports to the board. It's a 20-some page document. There's a lot to unpack in these. We have over 30 charts and graphs that depict and characterize a lot of the goings-on of the previous month. We provided the December report last week for December 2023. And so for each month, the following month, we provide kind of a snapshot, just a simple 2-page slide review, kind of capturing a highlight of that report. And then we'll certainly open it up for questions if you have any. So for December, on the water side, we collected all the bacteriological analysis for the county and all the various systems that are operated. They all came back fine. There was a contracted company that started work on one of the water towers, that is Southern Corrosion, and they do not only inspection and structural and integrity inspections of our water towers, but they also do recoating, rehabilitation of our water towers, and that was one of their items that they started last month. All quarterly samples for all wells, they have been collected and analyzed and sent into the state. And then we're also continuing to backwash the green sand filters in a manner that is not, it's removing and capturing the iron and manganese, but we're also trying to minimize water loss. Every time you do a backwash, there's a loss of water that occurs. And so we're trying to hone that in and do some on-site testing to make sure that we're only backwashing on a required basis, not just on a set schedule. There was wells A and D were flushed at the Hop Yard system, and for the month of December, pretty quiet month for water operations. December, on the other hand, we had a lot going on the wastewater side, and involving 2 LOEs that we had to submit to DEQ. That is the regulatory arm of the Virginia State Department of Environmental Quality. We also battled high influent and infiltration I&I at each of these facilities, but particularly we were inundated at the Perkins and the Dahlgren wastewater treatment plants. In some of those I&I events, we had to staff the facilities around the clock just to maintain compliance as much as we could. Ongoing issues with our chemical supplier as well. Our current chemical supplier is providing chemicals that are inferior to the product that we were receiving, or inferior to the products that we need to provide adequate biological wastewater treatment and nutrient removal at each of our facilities. So we are working with Kathy, and we're also working with John Eisenweiss and financing for emergency procurement to get the appropriate chemicals that we need. For certain, the inferior chemicals did provide a contributing factor to the Perkins LOE, and minimal effect at the Oakland Park. But the Oakland Park was the exceedance there for the TKN and TSS was a result of a failed mixer in the anoxic zone, as well as an impeller on an EQ pump that had failed. So we did provide, along with our utility report, a letter that we provide each time that there is an exceedance to the permit. We provide that to DEQ, and that was submitted along with the utility report. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about any of the discussion items tonight, or any questions in general.
Let me ask, anybody have any questions they would like to ask at this time? Mr. Davis? Mr. Collins?
So is there a way forward with getting the proper chemicals and making sure we don't get in that mess again?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do you have any?
All right. Thank you.
Continue on.
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
It's due or not, but we just paid a bill the other day for like $10,000 to replace with a pump that wasn't properly maintained. Are you aware of that? Does that fall on you, or?
That would be on the King George County maintenance side.
King George County maintenance side?
I don't know if the maintenance would like to speak to that, but the preventative maintenance of pumps and such, that is outside of the general maintenance that we provide in our contract.
Right.
But that is probably not something that was a lot of the infrastructure issues that we face we're going back years and years and years.
Right. Thank you.
Sorry about that. My phone's ringing. I couldn't find it in my bag.
I'm going to ask John to come up.
Yes. Can I have John come up and answer a question?
We have two Johns.
Mr. Eisenweiss.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I just want to just kind of get an idea. You know, mistakes happen, right? And we know that wasn't properly maintained. It was a year old.
It wasn't a maintenance issue, it was an operational issue.
Operational issue?
On their side, it was the previous water apparatus before them both took over.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're taking steps. I know we make mistakes, just taking steps to make sure things don't happen again. You know, with people like that, as far as our employees and people working for us, it's just kind of a big thing for us. That's all. That's it. Thank you, sir.
I want to bring out too that Mr. Eisenweiss called me directly the day when we had a problem with the chemicals, and we took care of it real quickly. Yes. But that is another reason why we are trying to evaluate everything quickly to have a path forward that is a successful path forward and not a path forward that's going to fail like in the past it wasn't the best path forward. So we're trying to have a proper, and we can work together in tandem so that, you know, we have a good system, and you know, I never like to give up. So I think we could do it the right way this time. That's what we owe the citizens. Do we have any other questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, we had already mentioned, does anybody have any questions on the notice of violations? Those were all sent to you, and they are next two items. They're kind of self-explanatory. Yeah. Next is Mr. Andrew Grossnickel with Robinson, Farmer, and Cox for our FY 2022-2023 audit. We'll have a presentation for the King George Service Authority.
Thank you, and thank you for your time this evening. Just going to go over the audit results for the year ended June 30th, 2023 for the Service Authority. And then later down the agenda, we'll also go over the audit for the county itself. Just a quick engagement summary. We've been engaged to perform financial statement audit and compliance report for the authority for the year ended June 30th, 2023. That audit was subject to auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America, specifications of audits of authorities, boards, and commissions that's issued by the APA, that's the Auditor of Public Accounts for Virginia, and the standards for financial audits contained in the government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. Main byproduct of our audit process are our independent auditors' reports. And in your financial statements for the Service Authority for the year ended June 30, 2023, there are 2 of those auditor type reports included in there. The first of those is the independent auditor's report itself. I like to say that report is on the numbers. You know, that's on the financial statements and the accuracy of the numbers therein. We issued an unmodified opinion for the independent auditor's report for the year ended June 30th, 2023. That's in layman's terms, that's a clean report. Sometimes the accounting legalese of unmodified can be confusing, but that's the opinion you're looking for there. The second report that we have is related to internal control and compliance related matters. And that's what some folks will refer to as the Yellow Book report or the Government Auditing Standards report. A lot of most governmental entities will undergo what's called a Yellow Book audit during the course of their financial statement audit. And in this report, we would note any internal control material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. For the Service Authority, we did not have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies to report for the year ended June 30th, 2023. Just want to go over a few high-level financial statement highlights for the year ended June 30th, 2023. I will point out that these financial statements for both the Service Authority, County, they've gotten lengthy due to different accounting pronouncements over the years. It can be a little bit hard to kind of boil those down into concise points. But one thing I'll point out is that there's a document within the financial statements called the Management Discussion and Analysis. It's right after our independent auditors report, and it kind of gives just basically highlight bullet points of year-end balances for fund balance and net position, things of that nature, some of the changes year to year and things like that. And it's only several pages long, so it's a good item to read and refer back and forth to as you try to dig into the financial statements, into the annual comprehensive financial statements. But just a couple of highlights for the Service Authority. The net position at June 30th, 2023 was $23.9 million. Service Authority is on a full accrual basis, so that includes all long-term assets and long-term liabilities, and that's the residual there. The residual, retained earnings essentially of the organization is referred to as net position. So your assets and deferred outflows exceeded your, liabilities and deferred inflows by $23.9 million, June 30th, 2023. That was an increase in net position of $1.1 million from June 30th, 2022. And the operating income for the year ended June 30th, 2023 was $1,445,974. Just a quick synopsis of the trend in the total overall net position for the Service Authority for the last 5 years there. In 2000, or the change in the net position year to year. You can see back in 2019, there was actually a decrease in net position for the year. And then the next couple of years, we turned into a positive increase in net position 20 and 21. And then in 22 and then again in 23, the increases exceeded $1 million with 22 being $2.1 million increase in net position and 23 being a $1.1 million increase in that bottom line net position. I have just here a brief kind of line graph here showing for the last 5 years the operating revenue and operating expenses year to year. You can see back in that 2019 year end, they were very close there, and then the non-operating items drove that into that reduction of net position that I referenced earlier. And then ever since then, the operating revenues have exceeded the operating expenses there for the Service Authority for the last 4 years. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions related to the Service Authority's financial statements and audit for June 30th, 2023.
Does anyone have any questions? I know it's a lot of information to absorb.
I do not.
Mr. Stallings? Mr. Collins? Do you have anything? I thank you as always. I always enjoy reading your reports and dive into them, but I haven't had the time to 100% read your presentation already. Thank you once again.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. All right, next up is, this is an action item, the approval of the Board of Director bylaws. Mr. Stewart?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm not sure these were included in the packet when it went out last week. I just mentioned that because you may not want to take action on them tonight because the public hadn't seen them.
I would agree with that.
I'm not sure, but I think they were not.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Collins.
make a motion to table approval of the Board of Directors bylaws for the Service Authority.
Do I have a second for that?
Second.
All right, motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And so, Madam Chair, I would just say we made, I think, all the changes you all were looking at. Perhaps you all could look over them. And if you see any other, and then we can put them out for a vote for the next time.
All right, thank you. I'll just finish the motion. Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Next up is discussion and approval of the interim county attorney contract.
You want me to leave for that?
No, it'll be okay, if you don't mind.
So, Madam Chair, I think we put it on this for you all to review it as well from the Board of Directors. The contract that is before you all is similar to what I do with Westmoreland County, although a different amount because I will do a lot more for you. But it's for $138,000 a year and a flat fee that would be billed monthly. I will not be an employee of the county. I'm a contract attorney, so I would not get any benefits. I have my own liability insurance and all of that. Also, if there's any litigation, it's $250 an hour, which is exactly the same that I give the other county I represent. And I looked at the county attorney budget. Don't hold me to this, because I at some point I want to talk to you all about giving Ms. Washington maybe a little more money because she's fantastic, and I've been really impressed with her as she stepped up during this transition. But I think given this, we probably can, this will probably save the county somewhere between $50,000 and $80,000 a year from the old county attorney's budget.
Yes, and I also would like to put out that with Mr. Stewart, and before we had to contract with Aqua Law to do any litigation, and that is a cost we do not have to incur anymore.
Yes, my understanding was Sands Anderson and others did a lot of the litigation. With the board's approval, I prefer to do that myself because I've been doing it for quite some time, and I actually very much enjoy litigating cases in the courtroom. So hopefully we won't need to do that, but.
Mr. Collins?
Ms. Pender, I'd like to make a motion.
Right ahead.
Make a motion that Mr. Stewart will serve as inter-county attorney on a part-time basis and will be compensated a fixed fee of $138,000 per fiscal year. He shall not receive any employee benefits. Mr. Stewart will be compensated on an hourly rate of $250 for any trial work in any courts in Virginia or elsewhere. Mr. Stewart will bill the county on an annual monthly basis for hourly fee and expenses not yet paid, and his employment shall be at will.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion properly made and properly seconded. To have any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Stewart, you got notices to dental practices regarding the dental rule.
Yes, Madam Chair. This was something that Ms. Washington and I found that needs to be sent out. Essentially, there is a provision by the EPA, and some of the dentists in the community may be violating it, and they may not even know, and disposing of certain things into the wastewater treatment. So we just need to send them a letter saying you can't do that. Otherwise, it violates EPA law.
So do you need a motion for that?
I don't think so, Madam Chair. I think that's more for informational purposes for you all.
There be agreeable to that? All right. Thank you very much. Next up, Ms. Donna Hahn, Director of Finance, Water and Sewer Line Repairs.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. The chair and I spoke last week concerning an emergency procurement that was done to fix a water main break. And we talked about that we do not currently have a contract in place for that type of work. We had 2 previous contracts, both of those are no longer in existence. And she would like the board to go ahead and direct staff to advertise without a solicitation for a new contract for water and sewer line repairs.
And with that, the consultation, knowing that we need one because this water main break happened just before the new board members came on. It was between Christmas and New Year's. It did have an $11,000 line item for it, but it had to be done. It was the problem at Dahlgren that some people might have experienced. But with that being said, we need to have a contractor to be able to on call. The only thing that maybe we suggest to put on the next board meeting is to have Ms. Hahn come back with a written description of the RFP we're going to put out to try to get a contractor to come, just so we have eyes on the RFP and then put it out for bid. So what is the will of the board?
Senator?
Go ahead, Mr. Collins.
May I get John up here? I wanted to ask some questions about that particular water main break.
Sir.
That water main break was at Dahlgren, correct?
Yes.
And how deep was the water main break?
Approximately 6.5 feet.
And your excavator that you have, how deep can it get?
It'll work effectively till 12 feet. Our issue there was we don't have the equipment to get through the asphalt. The asphalt was 21 inches thick in that spot, and we don't have the equipment to do that.
What type of equipment would you need?
We need an excavator with a breaker on it that we can cut through and then break up the asphalt. We don't have a breaker we can't get a breaker for our excavator, it's too old.
You can't get a breaker for the one you got?
That's correct.
Can you get a separate breaker just to break it? Without the equipment?
We could get a manual one, but it'd take a considerable amount of time to do it manually. So we've been trying to get a new excavator that we could get the attachment for, but we've been working with finance to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Bender?
Go ahead, Mr. Collins.
So I think that we should be able to do our repairs in-house. And I think it would be a large savings instead of paying $11,000. I mean, you're almost halfway there for a piece of equipment that can fix it. So if you do 2 or 3 of those breaks, you'd be saving money on that. I think that our own people should be able to fix our own stuff and have our own equipment. And only a super emergency would there be a RFP for another company to come out. Thank you.
Mr. Eisenmeyer, since you're up here, do you have a quote for how much a new? I know we've discussed this at our excavator. It kind of is way past its lifespan. Is there quote that you have for a new excavator that could do this work?
That's it for the excavator, base excavator. It's $84,000, and that's on a state contract.
What is the thought of the board? I mean, the other question is, even if we had that, do we need to have a company on call if you're not available to do so?
There will be times we may need a contract, but like in that same situation, we had double water leaks going on at that time. We were fixing one in one spot, and they were at the other spot. We would have made Dahlgren a priority if that was the case, and kind of left the other one to fix that one because it's in a roadway, if we had the equipment to do it. But we just called in the contractor. I would say we'd be able to perform 98 to 99% of our own repairs if we have the equipment to do it.
Mr. Solons?
Sir, there are other costs that we're not aware of, maintenance, licensing fees for the operator, things like that. Is there a reason we can't just rent it?
rental is gonna be more expensive or leasing. I did get a lease quote also. It would be a comparison of 84,000 to buy one. Lease for 5 years would come out to around 120, 130,000. And we have the same maintenance built into a purchased one as it would be a leased one. So it would come with factory care from the start if we purchase.
Mr. Collins?
So our wonderful partners with VDOT, since they put in 21 inches of pavement, they couldn't break it for us? Mr. Beal? No? Can't help us out? No. Okay. The excavator, did you look at what type of excavator?
It's a Caterpillar 340.
The only reason I asked that, Ms. Bender, is because Kubota has 0% financing. I just bought one, so I know for the life of it. But anyhow, thank you.
Did you have any questions?
No.
So I'm going to take the direction of the board. So is it the will of the next agenda, maybe have a quote, maybe Caterpillar or Kubota, about purchasing an excavator and then also the RFP? Because we should have it in our pocket in case there was a time that there was two things going on and we actually had to have a contractor. Because right now, Ms. Hahn, we do not have somebody under contract for that specific. So what is the will of the board? Maybe next meeting, having two bids, two different companies for the excavator, and then the RFP, a written RFP that we can approve for Ms. Hahn to send out.
Do we have anybody that can do a price comparison? Comparison of what it cost a year for this type of contract as opposed to a purchase?
So we could, I could have procurement staff investigate any leasing, but again, you get into the situation where you can't just go out and lease with anyone at this cost that it would incur. The best bet is a state contract, and I believe that's what Mr. Eisenbeis or a cooperative contract is something that he'd already looked at, but we can look to see if there's any others out there. But I can have staff get with Mr. Eisenbeis and work with him and see what we can find out.
Ms. Bennett?
Go ahead, Mr. Collins.
I just think we need to do the best for the customers. Sometimes it's not always buying a piece of equipment. Sometimes it is. Depending upon how many breaks and what the depths are, what the concrete or whatever it is to get through, and all those factors need to be taken into consideration before we jump to any conclusions at this time. Thank you.
So I would agree, Mr. Collins, and I think that's a wise decision for the board to take under advisement. So last week we heard that there was I'll say kind of a contract maybe failure with a company getting chemicals. Now we don't have a contract with or an available contract to do some level of work, whatever that is. Is there anything else somewhere in the service authority where their contract doesn't exist, where we need to bring this up, where a contract's expiring in the next, 90 or 180 days that, should probably all be brought up? Because it may be wise to issue one RFP that covers a couple of those,
Well, each type of work, like chemicals, is actually what's called an IFB, an invitation for bid, because it is a good and not a service. If you're looking more for services, it would be an RFP, request for proposals, and you don't want to combine different types of work into one RFP because you're not going to have ABC company could maybe bid on this part of it and XYZ on this part of it, but nobody could bid on everything, and it's too cumbersome when you try to combine everything into one.
Sure. So maybe separating goods and services from, or goods from services.
Right, but it depends on what kind of services that it is. Like in this instance, the online, or the on-call water and sewer line repairs, they would encompass anything in that nature. but if there was anything else that would need to be looked at and considered, whether, most of the time, you're not gonna wanna combine more than one type of service on an RFP.
You have anything more? Mr. Collins again?
So $11,000 was for the contractor, right?
That's correct.
How much was it for service authority staff?
I wouldn't know. I don't know what staff was there, who participated, number of hours, that kind of information. I would need all that before I could calculate and give you a price on staff.
That's what I'm talking about. We need to have the totality of the information to make a good decision.
So what is the will of the board for some direction? Hearing this, Ms. Hahn and I have to go back to the drawing board and come up with something to put on the February 1st agenda to show at least the pricing and maybe come up with a spreadsheet of contracts that we might need to put out for bid. And maybe it might not be just one all-encompassing RFP, but more than one.
That's correct.
Is that okay with everyone? Consensus?
So we're going to leave this for discussion at a future date.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just get a totality of the numbers, like Mr. Collins said. I think that's a good idea. And also just take a look at any kind of contract we have with any services that not just expiring, but things that maybe we're not just overly thrilled or happy with. You know, right? And in any aspect, and people that maybe they haven't done quite the best job for our county. We need to look at all those people instead of just saying it's done and brush it under the rug. But you know, we kind of deserve to get the best if we're going to pay for it. So take a look at everything as a totality and then bring that together and take a look at it. Yeah.
Ms. Hahn and Ms. Fish, I would put it under maybe as the title of contracts, overview of the contracts, on-call and regular contracts, supply contracts.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So I just want to make sure that our service authority and our provider in Bowdoin, John and everybody, have the equipment necessary to do the job at a fair rate to the customers. That's the bottom line. Thank you.
Mr. Collins. Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Next up, for discussion, KGI communications response from Mr. Stewart. This is something that came up in the last board meeting, December 19th, and it was never addressed, but it needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So KGI, as you all know better than I do, lease sites on your water towers. For $1,000 per month per tower, they are now saying that they don't have enough business to justify leasing those sites on the tower. They did have a contract until 2025, I believe, and it was in, I don't have the contract in front of me. I did not see anything in that contract that would allow them to terminate it, but they are asking that it be terminated because they say they don't have the customers and they can't pay it. Now they still have a site, I believe it's at Hop Yard, and they let the service authority use the service there, but I think that is what I understand the deal was. That is all of the remittance the county gets from that is the ability from the service authority to use the wireless service. So you all need to decide if you want to allow them, if you want me to send them a letter saying no, but you can't get blood from a turnip. And we've tried to investigate that. I can't give you any sense that I'm 100% confident that they can't pay their bills. I can't get that information. Ms. Washington has looked as well, and we can't find anything definitive that says they are impoverished. So y'all have to instruct us how to go forward.
Mr. Collins.
So if the county entered into a contract and we were on the other side of the stick, we would have to pay the $1,000 a month. So I think that we should hold it to them. They haven't filed for bankruptcy, have they?
Not that we can find.
Okay. So my view would be to hold them to the contract.
Do I have consensus from the board to hold them to the contract and maybe Mr. Stewart to direct the letter to them to that?
Yes.
So, all right, you have direction. All right. Next up, this is a topic, the leadership and organizational structure of the service authority. Open to discussion on this. Is just a discussion item. My intention, as I put earlier, was to take a two-week deep dive into the service authority. I mean, really honestly need more than a 2-week deep dive, but enough to come up with a plan for the next meeting that we could then modify, adjust, and move forward so that we have a timeline and a path. Because I mean, one of the reasons I didn't like the absorption of the service authority, even though you can whatever narrative you want that we did 2 years of planning, we didn't, because all the different ways that what we could do with the service authority were not looked at thoroughly. I mean, I'm not asking for a year to decide. We got to put a date to it because we can't leave everybody out there. But we need to move in a very efficient manner, and that is my intention to have on the February 1st meeting, sort of a path that then we can have an open discussion and probably a work session about. So that is what I wanted to bring up right now. Does anybody have any thoughts or direction? Hold on, Mr. Collins. Let me let somebody else go first this time. Mr. Davis?
No.
Mr. Stallings? Now, Mr. Collins. I should have went with you first.
No, I always have something to say. So we need to figure out what the worth of the system is first. So we need an evaluation of the
That's next on the agenda.
facilities, not preventive maintenance schedule, but the evaluation of the system and the value from an independent company. So we know where we're at, and you can't really do one without the other. So you need to do that one first, I believe.
Right, that was the next one on the agenda, and I'm going to call up Mr. Bryce Young to come up with that. And I'm going to give you some background. In 2018, when we first got our rounds of violations, we had Aqua come in after our general manager left. We had Aqua come in, and they didn't really do an evaluation. They made us an offer to buy at the end, and the offer was basically just to take over the debt. And we were just giving them everything, in my opinion, for free. So, but at that time, we really couldn't argue with Aqua on a price because we didn't have any kind of estimate of what assets we had, their actual value, their depreciation value, or our supplies. What do we have? So that's one thing that we really need to finally get a handle on, because whatever we do, we need to know how much we're worth. So, Mr. Young?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. A evaluation, as previously mentioned, will include a scope to develop a value for the existing water and wastewater collection and conveyance systems. The evaluation will be based on best available information on asset depreciation, book value, replacement cost, and the overall value for King George County. The valuation would include the replacement costs for the majority of the system components. Also would be developed to obtain an idea of the total system value. Many of the assets that the county has have reached their end of useful life, and this would, while they would be valued as zero through depreciation, this would include replacement costs for them, so we know how to plan going forward. Any questions?
No. Go ahead.
So the evaluation of the assets and everything that we have, and would that include what we just talked about when it comes to buying an excavator for part of this, the trucks that the county owns to dispatch maintenance for all of those assets in total, not just the wastewater treatment plants and the wells and things like that, but it would cover anything under the authority of the service authority?
Correct. It would include anything owned by the service authority.
And it would also include our supplies, what we have on hand, what we need to order, if a thorough, I know finance has some of the capital assets, but we don't have a thorough accounting of everything. Mr. Collins?
So can BOD do those type of things? Would they Mr. Bowden? Can you come up here? Is your company, can they do that type of work?
We have not done that in the past, sir. We have created utility master plans and costing out capital improvement projects, but assessing the value of a utility, it's not something that we've done in the past. Most companies would look at this as a business perspective, and they would look mostly at the generative income that they can have over a period of 5 years. So rule of thumb would be your expenses minus your income, and multiply that over whatever multiple factor you want, and then that would land them somewhere around a purchase price, then absorbing the debt.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, so where do we go from here? Do we see how much it costs for someone to do that work?
I was going to suggest that there are some options. I've spoke to a couple of folks that could possibly come in and do some of this work for under our normal procurement, like $5,000. But I was going to bring the options on February 1st of how we can move forward and find a company to do this work. And I do know Mr. Cruzamir has looked into it a little bit, and he also in the hop yard. Forget was the president. It's a book. It was one of the books I found is where they went through the hop yard plant of what was needed to have be done with it to bring Oakland Park and Perkins to it and to make it run more efficiently. There was a cost benefit. And I think one of my most eye-opening things was how many things are really at their end of life and need to be replaced. So for February 1st to add that on the agenda item, the options that then we can decide what our path is. Because there is some options that I just haven't written them down yet. All right, thank you. And Mr. Young, we're going to need you one more for any questions on the next one. So in our finding of things, there was years ago in 2022, we were presented some information about the raw water intake, and we've spent a lot of times talking about this. This is the water intake that Birchwood currently has with DEQ. It expires in 2034. The county did have a company, our K&K, come and evaluate and look at that asset and whether the county could make an offer on purchasing the permit and the intake so that we would then have control of that tap into the Rappahannock. We did make an offer. Birchwood declined to take our offer. But with that, we were given a presentation in the back in the closed session, and we couldn't take that back out. But there was also a document with it that fully detailed this raw water study. And I think it's really important because it highlights exactly what I was talking about and Mr. Collins in the Amazon and about why we need the water that we need for our citizens. It highlighted it perfectly. And Mr. Stewart, I talked to him about what do we do because it was marked confidential. So he gave me a path forward. So that's why I bring it here today, is that we can get consensus or a motion to make it unconfidential so that the public could read it. The public paid for it. They should be able to read it. But there are some things in it that are information that normally would not go out to the public because you have to be protected of the security and the assets, and you don't want people looking at certain parts of it like the water intake and doing something, Homeland Security wise. So there are some parts that do, and Birchwood does have the right for some proprietary information that has to be redacted. So Mr. Stewart, could you explain a little bit more on that and the process?
Yes, Madam Chair. It is a public document. It was paid for by the public. As you discussed, we saw it, found it, and there are Homeland Security issues. Essentially, you don't want terrorists finding out certain information and taking advantage of that to exploit it. And so I think it would be prudent to redact those sensitive portions just more for the protection of the public than anything else, so something doesn't happen to any of these systems.
Mr. Young, I had you stay up here as you would be involved in that process, correct? Because you would look at some of the documents and the engineering side, Mr. Kuzinberry, and then Mr. Stewart, Ms. Washington. So do I have any other questions for Mr. Young or Mr. Stewart on this document or a motion?
No questions.
So this was a public document that was never public.
Correct.
Okay. So, and it's marked confidential. I make a motion that we release that to the public after it's been redacted for the proper things through the engineering department and the legal department.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Right, there's been a motion properly second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Chair votes aye, the motion carries. And thank you, Mr. Young, for taking a moment. You're taking a test soon, and I wish you congratulations on it. And thank you for taking your time up from studying. So your engineering test, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, good luck on your test.
Thank you.
Thank you.
PE?
Yes, sir.
All right, our next up is the Hop Yard Section 10 deed approval. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the last section of Hop Yard, and it is the same procedure that you all have followed through. I guess it's been 5 sections built in there. This is the final deed to convey the assets which have been built to the service authority. They have put in place a water sewer utility bond in the amount of $451,000, and they put in an infrastructure bond in the amount of $580,694. I reviewed the deed. The deed is fine, and I can do as approved to form, which is typically what the county attorney does. I also asked Mr. Kusenberry and I guess Bryce's office to review. I just want to make sure they did what they were supposed to do, and the sewers authority wasn't taking a pig in a poke, and they've reviewed it, and it's their determination that they have done what they were supposed to do, and the assets are worth accepting.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Any discussion? I've been through a lot of these. This is normal
It
form.
would just be to accept the deed.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we accept the deed as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Collins, do you have discussion? All those in favor vote aye or say aye. Any nays? Chair votes aye, motion carries. I expected Mr. Collins to have a question. All right. Hold on 1 second. So this is a new thing we're doing. So right now go ahead, Mr. Collins.
Thank you. So secondary public comment to address meeting business matters only. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. Please provide your full name and your district when submitting your public comment so that it can be properly recorded and included in the public record. Is there anyone that would like to address the board of directors or the board of supervisors? Come on up, ma'am. Both of us.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Gay. I actually live right across the street on Willow Hill. I'm still interested, and I really appreciate you all talking about the Service Authority, about how they're going to reduce the bill in the future. I have not heard that yet. I haven't gone to all the meetings, but I'm still not hearing about how that water bill is going to get reduced for the consumers. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else like to address the board of directors with a question or comment? All right, we will go ahead, Mr. We'll close public comment.
Can I address the public comment?
Yes, go right ahead.
Ms. Gay, the way that the Service Authority Board of Directors are going to address the debt for the customers is through the operation and maintenance of the authority properly, so it will reduce the debt to the customers. So our goal is to get rid of that $35 million in debt, which will reduce your bill in half. But it's not going to happen tomorrow now. Okay. This is if I had a snow globe or a globe of the future, I would tell you. But my goal, I don't know what the other one's goal is within this year, because I only have 2 more years on the board.
Would anybody else? I'm going to close the public comment side, but board of directors, does anybody like to address that comment? Mr. Davis?
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. Appreciate that. it's something that I'm the diamond supervisor, so we have the largest portion of the water being used by my constituents. And this is one thing that everyone's reached out to me to address. What you're seeing in the level of transparency that we're trying to bring right now, we're having these discussions in front of you as far as we don't even know what we have. I mean, this has been mismanaged for 30 years. So it didn't start yesterday. It didn't start with the last board. This is 30 years of mismanagement, of not even knowing what assets we have. We don't have an inventory, okay? So when things pop back up on a budget and you're like, man, we just bought that last year. What happened to the other one? Who's signing it out? Who's taking care of it? We don't know. So what we're doing right now is we're starting from basically from square one, except for the fact that we do have the documents from the past to go by to see where some of the problems were, and we're trying to solve it as a whole. I could say, you know what, we're going to take $26 million and we're just going to pay off the debt. You know what's going to happen at the end of the year? There's going to be more fees, more fines, more all that stuff's just going to pop right back up on you. So until we deal with the issue itself, and all these issues come down to one thing: saving money for King George and saving money for you. I mean, the last thing we want to do is raise taxes. The last thing I want to do is for you to have $150 added to your bill to help pay off debt that you probably didn't even accumulate, someone's responsible for. But what we're talking about are those things. But we're starting from basically laying the foundation in order to build that house. And it's going to take a process to get there. And what we're going to do now, and this is what I've asked Ms. Binder about, Ms. Bender, I'm sorry, is basically what is the long-term plan? Because there hasn't been a plan. It's just been sticking fingers in the dike, you know, and more pop up and more pipe up. And there's been no really plan to help deal with it and setting milestones of going, what are we going to do as far as when do we hope to have this by? When do we hope to have these answers by? And giving ourselves a timeline. And to deciding really at the end of the day, is if 30 years we can't fix it and we're not going to work on it now, then maybe it's best if someone else does, in a sense. Maybe we need to unload it or sell it. And that's not the way that you want to go. But at the end of the day, if you can't manage it, why would you keep trying to? So we're trying to figure that out. I promise you that it's going to take some time, but just keep coming and keep listening, and we're going to do all we can to solve it.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Do we have any? What he said? I promise you, I've wanted to solve the problem for a while, and it's going to be a process. And that's all, you know, you always say don't promise, but all we can do is a process and a timeline. And as we said last year, is to stick to milestones, and you got to vote on milestones so you made sure that you stick by them. And the first thing is figuring out how we got here very quickly and a path forward. And that's all I can promise you. So I know you can, Mr. Collins, but we'll move on. And can I have a motion for adjournment of the Board of Directors?
I make a motion to adjourn the King George Board of Directors on January 16th and
Just say
to adjourn to February 6th.
read the whole thing.
Adjourn to February 6th, 2024 at 5:30 in the Robert Combs boardroom.
I have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll you want to take a quick recess while we switch?
Yes. 5-minute recess, please.
And thank you, everybody, for bearing with us as we try out this new agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, you got 5 minutes. King George Board of Supervisors is now back in session. Chairman's going to make a slight change to agenda. Mr. Beal.
Hey, good evening. My name is David Beal. I'm the resident engineer for VDOT for the Northern Neck residency. It's good to be here tonight. I don't come very often, but I'm always glad to be here when I can be here. I would say for the new board members, I sent a Board of Supervisors manual, which is a document that VDOT produces that has all of our programs and policies. It's a good reference manual. If you haven't seen it yet, let me know and I'll get you a copy. And I do tell everyone if you're ever having trouble falling asleep, it's a good cure for that as well. I'll run through my report here, and then if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Over the last month, we've graded gravel roads, Kings Mill and Alden Road. We patched potholes, repaired signs, and cut brush. Countywide, the brush is on Jersey Road, and we repaired a ditch on 218. We addressed work orders countywide, and here lately, every few days, we have some sort of severe weather. So we've responded to wind events last week and snow events this week, and I believe more snow on Friday. On the plan, as weather allows us to get to it, we have some ditches to clean on Pond Hill, shoulder repairs on Ridge Road, 206, and then brush cutting on Indian Town, and we'll keep up with our countywide patching up potholes, repairing signs, and work orders. The HSIP portion there, that stands for Highway Safety Improvement Funds. That's federal dollars for safety. We're planning to pave the shoulders on 205 from 301 to Route 3 this year. The secondary 6-year plan, that's the SSYP. We update that every spring, so I'd like to come back in April and give a presentation, and then in May we'll need to pass we'll have a public hearing and pass the updated plan. We've done the drainage and stonework on Prim Road. The second phase of that, it's ready to be surface treated. We'll do that in the spring when the weather warms up a little bit. And then we're planning to surface treat Dixon Lane later this year. I hope that we'll take the funding from those roads that are left over and move it up to Bald Eagle, and hopefully we'll be able to move that 2028 date up a couple years. The smart scale projects, they've been on this, well, 2 of them have been there on the list here since at least 2020. And we're starting to work on them now. So if you have questions about them, I'm happy to answer those. The Port Conway R-Cut, that project was just approved with the last round of smart scale last year. Our customer service center is 1-800-4 Road. That's the telephone number that is answered 24/7. So any citizen inquiries or work order requests, that's the best place. They go straight to our superintendent. Dennis Maxey is here with me tonight. He's King George resident. Grew up here, raised his family here, lives here now, and he's a superintendent up there in Edge Hill. Does a great job, him and his team. So appreciate them. And those service requests go directly to him. He gets them as soon as the operator and puts them in. So that's a good way to get your issue looked at. My contact information is there. That's my my office line. It rolls to my cell phone, so feel free to reach out with any questions you have for me anytime. That's everything that's in my report. If you all have any questions for me or comments, I'm happy to take them.
Questions, comments from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just wanted, before you even come, since I have 3 new colleagues, can you give a brief summary to them what the smart scale is and what the secondary road project is? Because it took me a little bit to understand them and learn, but they might have questions, and it's the process.
Yeah, so secondary 6-year plan, SSYP, we update that every year. The county receives maybe about $150,000 a year that's split between two different funding sources. One is unpaved roads and one is telefees. The telefees are generated from the utility companies that use the right-of-way. It's like a right-of-way usage fee, and then it's redistributed, reallocated to each county to prioritize for transportation projects. So the telefees can be used for most anything. Unpaved road funds have to be used on hard surfacing unpaved roads. Traditionally, the county has used both telefees and the unpaved road funds to hard surface unpaved roads. So these 3 projects, Prim Road, Dixon Lane, Bald Eagle, those are existing state maintained gravel roads that we are surface treating. And you know, if you wanted to buy a drainage easement, if you wanted to buy a site distance easement, buy right-of-way or easements, if you wanted to build a turn lane, those types of things can be done in the secondary 6-year plan, but we want the projects to be funded within the plan. So there's a limited amount of state dollars in that plan. The county can put money in the plan, but traditionally have not done that. So typically we're surface treating existing state maintained gravel roads with that. Smart scale, I don't know that I can give you a fair summary on that. It's a fairly complex program that the General Assembly approved with, I don't remember what year it was, maybe about 10 years ago. And basically all the localities request transportation projects, or you can request transportation projects. They have to screen in, so they have to meet a VTrans need. VTrans is the state's transportation comprehensive plan. So if a project meets a VTrans need, it screens into the program, and then it's scored based on the merit and you know, economic development. If you have economic development sites, or if it meets a safety need, if it reduces congestion, there are a bunch of different measures for how well it scores. And then the score is equalized to the cost. So expensive projects don't score as well as a lesser expensive project with the same amount of points. You can buy down your score by putting county money on the project. So it's fairly complex. All the counties compete, and however it ranks out, that goes to the CTB, and they make any adjustments to the list of projects that'll be awarded. Typically there are 4 applications. You can have up to 4 sites, and we're working with county staff now to you know, define those sites and do a pre-application and get those submitted. Last year, it's a biennial cycle, meaning the smart scale is every other year. It alternates with revenue sharing. Revenue sharing is another program that's not on here because you don't have any projects currently funded. Well, not any VDOT projects. The county has a project at the middle school, which is revenue sharing, but I don't track that on my list here. So anyway, those programs alternate every other year. We're working on smart scale applications now, but smart scale is the largest transportation funding program, and it's the one where you can get something without putting in any dollars, local dollars, if the need is enough that it scores high enough. But it's increasingly difficult to get a project funded without local funds.
Thank you. You did a good job. And Mr. Beal is always responsive, especially when I call him to get a question answered or to help a citizen.
Stroud?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, sir, Mr. Beal. So two things. One, where Millbank Road comes into Port Conway Road, if you're on Millbank and let's say you're going to turn right onto Port Conway, that needs to be looked at, and you could take a look at it because I've had a couple complaints there, and I went and looked at it, and sure enough, the road just falls off there, and you can see, where it needs to be looked at. It's a problem. It's just a.
So that's
So-
on Millbank looking to the left?
If you're on Millbank turning right
Okay.
onto Port Conway, where the ditch or whatever comes together, it's just a bad spot. The second thing is we had talked before. I got into office about littering. Okay, I've got an issue with littering. For those that are listening in, I don't like litter. And if you go down Route 3, King George looks very bad, wherever it comes from. I've got a lot of people saying, well, it comes from the trash trucks. But I picked up bags of litter out of my driveway that came from an individual that came off his trailer. That particular person, I looked for the addresses and names on there, and it's happened several times. But there's a lot of trash. Sofas, I don't know if that came out of a trash truck, but they're on the side of our roads. I spoke to you about maybe getting some littering signs, stop littering signs, and you were against that. I was in Texas over the weekend, and of course there you got a lot of big signs, and they say, don't mess with Texas. And what you don't have in Texas is litter. The other signs I saw are signs that said report littering. And there's a phone number, and you can dial it. And, so there's a process. And it's actually a crime to litter in the state of Virginia. Okay, so that's something I may need to talk to the sheriff's office about, maybe figuring out a way to enforce it. So I don't have any solutions right now, but I'm just letting you know that I'd like to re-engage on littering because I really don't like King George looking like the trash pit of Virginia. And it looks bad right now. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Stroud. Mr. Sullins? Mr. Davis? Mr. Beal, Mr. Maxey, could you stand just for a moment, please? Come on over. I just wanted to give you my personal thanks. I've been on the board 2 years, and you've been here for 2 years. And in that 2 years, both of y'all have done an extraordinary job. Potholes are being fixed that were never fixed. Ditches being cleaned out were never cleaned out. Trees taken down were never taken down. When I was a trooper back in the day, I used to work the interstate in Caroline, and 301 would be cleared all the way over to Port Royal. And then you got into King George, and it was the snow-covered roads. Well, I can tell you that even on Facebook, people said tonight at this storm was those roads were covered, ours were not. So I just want it to be known publicly of what a wonderful job you're doing, Mr. Maxey, and we appreciate every bit of it. I've contacted you when you were working on another site, and I said, hey, there's a pothole over there. And by the time I got over there, which was like 30 minutes later, the pothole was taken care of. So the responsiveness for BDOT is just unbelievable these days. And of course, because I give you a compliment, don't go the wrong way and go the opposite direction, but we really appreciate it. I want you to be seen and re-recognized in public. Thank you so much for both of y'all.
So, Mr. Stroud, you actually started, RCC is actually helping us pick up trash. They actually have been, when they have actually access on the weekends, they will actually come during the weekends and actually pick us up. So we have been trying about this. It's tough, but yeah.
Yes, sir. I know it's a tough job because I see the trucks and stuff like that. So.
You see the inmates out there, that's what they're doing.
Well, they did a good job the last time they mowed too. They did the best job that's ever been done last time they mowed. So.
Thank you all. Mr. Gus Nickel with Robbins Farmer and Cox, 2023 audit.
Thank you. And just for purposes of the minutes, I noticed that on both the agendas, my name was Andre. It's Andrew with a W, but not a problem. But just for accuracy in the minutes, it could be my alter ego now, Andre. Usually it's my last name, with it being Grossnickel. Usually all the different spellings of things that come in the mail are usually wrong. Appreciate the time this evening to go over the results of our audit for the county for the year ended June 30th, 2023, and a couple of financial highlights as well. Um, from a overall standpoint, we were engaged to perform a financial statement audit and compliance report for the county for the year ended June 30th, 2023. This audit was subject to auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America, specifications of audits of counties, cities, and towns issued by the Auditor of Public Accounts, or APA of Virginia. The standards for financial audits contained in the government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General, and also the provisions of the uniform guidance. Main byproduct of our audit, as alluded to in the Service Authority meeting, is our independent auditors' reports, or our auditors' opinions. And there are 3 such reports in the financial statements for the county this year, or in the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, or ACFR as it's referred. The first is the Independent Auditor's Report. That's really on the numbers in the financial statements. This year we issued an unmodified opinion, or a clean opinion in layman's terms, on the financial statements. We do highlight, that opinion always does highlight any significant government accounting standards boards pronouncements that went into effect, or basically accounting standards for government entities that went into effect. And this year there was one. There's been a lot in the last 10, 20 years of these accounting standards that have a significant impact on the financial reporting of localities. This year it was GASB number 96 on subscription-based information technology agreements. The county did have some agreements that qualified for measurement under that. Basically, certain subscription IT type arrangements that are long-term in nature are now recorded and measured as a long-term liability on a full accrual basis, with an offsetting asset for the right to use that technology. And so that was the pronouncement that impacted the financials, and we do highlight that, just that the county did implement that standard that was required to be implemented this year. The second and third independent, or second and third auditor type reports that are contained in the financial statements are both compliance in nature. The first of those is the internal control over financial reporting on compliance. And that is that Yellow Book report, or government auditing standards report, and it addresses internal controls and compliance matters. And in that report, we note any material weaknesses in controls or significant deficiencies in controls. We did have one material weakness in internal controls to report for the year ended June 30th, 2023. That was in relation to material audit adjustments proposed by us as the audit firm, and that was a repeat finding. We had the same issue last year. The finance director has reached out, to me, to try to make sure that they have a plan in place to try to avoid that comment for next year. And we've talked about some solutions for that, mainly being some additional guidance from us on going through every one of those adjustments, and especially the significant ones, and how we kind of identified and captured those so that they can be captured internally, and we can avoid that finding moving forward. So we did have that weakness in control to report. The last of those reports that are auditor type reports in the ACFR is the compliance on each major program and internal control over compliance in accordance with the uniform guidance. This is referred to sometimes as a single audit report, or the uniform guidance report. Any government or nonprofit organization that expends over $750,000 in federal awards in a given year is required to undergo a uniform guidance audit, where we test certain major programs for the compliance requirements that are put out by the federal grantor agency for that individual grant. Pleased to report on that report we had no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in controls related to those federal grants that we did test as major programs for 2023 fiscal year end. A couple of communication items. You've received two items that are not included in the bound act for their separate memorandum type communications. The first of those is a communication with those charged with governance. That is just a communication we make at the end of the audit process every year. Communicating certain things that we're required to communicate on an annual basis, whether we had disagreements with management, some of the significant accounting estimates used, things of that nature. All of those communications in that governance letter are standard communications. The only thing that if you would kind of look at yours specifically compared to last year's, for example, we do highlight again in that communication, as in the independent auditor's report, that there is a new accounting pronouncement, that GASB 96, and that's referenced there in that communication letter. And then secondly, we have a management letter, comments and recommendations letter, memorandum, and that is what we do in that letter is sometimes through the audit process, there are items of internal control that we note for improvement that do not rise to the level of material weakness or significant deficiency in controls, but that we still think that the management should take under advisement. This year we had one comment in that memo related to the timeliness of federal reimbursement requests, and that OMB recommends that those be filed on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, or if it's a larger grant, say a Title I, a Title 6B that has recurring monthly large expenditures, that those be monthly in nature. And so we just have a recommendation there that those requests be filed in a more timely manner moving forward. Just a few financial statement highlights for the year ended June 30th, 2023. The financial statements for the County of King George have two different accounting bases included in them, as all local governments do. The first is a full accrual basis that includes all of your assets and liabilities, and the residual or retained earnings essentially is referred to as net position. And then the second basis is what we call a lot of times the budgetary basis. It's technically called the modified accrual basis of accounting, where the residual is referred to as fund balance, and you don't include your long-term assets and your long-term liabilities. Everything is near term when it comes to those balance sheet items, and the residual there is fund balance. So you often, when you're going through budgetary discussions, you talk about either adding to fund balance, the use of fund balance, and that's on that governmental basis, whereas the full accrual basis is to try to make the county's financial statements more in line with kind of how a business would report or a business type activity report. So on that full accrual basis, the net position of the governmental activities at June 30th, 2023 was $88.5 million. That was an increase in net position from the prior year of $724,946. And then on that basis that is measured with fund balances, that modified accrual basis, your fund balances of the governmental funds at June 30th, 2023 were $101,205,000, and that was an increase in the total overall governmental fund balances from June 30th, 22 to 23 of $11.5 million. The total unassigned fund balance of the general fund at June 30th, 2023 was $39.5 million. And from a budgetary standpoint, one exhibit when you have a chance to kind of dive more into the financial statements that I always like to highlight is exhibit number 9. And that exhibit gives you a budgetary comparison for the general fund of the original budget, final budget, actual figures by major revenue type, and then also by expenditure, basically on the department level. And so bottom line for that general fund comparison there, the general fund revenues were under budget by about $3 million, and general fund expenditures were held under budget by about $5.6 million. So, and for the revenues, part of that, certain grants are budgeted on a, full, life of the grant basis. And if you haven't, expended the monies for those grants, then you won't have the revenue until you meet those. But you ended up, instead of potentially using some fund balance in the fiscal year June 30th, 2023 of the general fund, you ended up adding some fund balance to the general fund balance. Next, I have just a few charts. The first one is a 5-year comparison of the general fund balance. And these are broken into different buckets. Non-spendable are things like prepaid expenses. Those have kind of already been spent, so the associated fund balance for them, can't be used for anything else. Then you have certain restricted items that an external party has restricted the use of certain amounts of monies. Then there's committed fund balance, where the board or the nature of the item has that amount of fund balance is committed. And then you have the unassigned fund balance that basically can be used at the discretion of the local government. And so you can see there the trend analysis of the overall fund balances, which have increased steadily, as well as the unassigned fund balance particularly has been increasing the last 5 years. This is just basically a graph version of the same information on the prior slide, with the different bars. The largest bar there being the unassigned fund balance, second largest in each of those years being the committed fund balance. Next, we have a line chart that just goes through the governmental fund revenues by major type over the last 5 years. Kind of shows you the trend analysis of those different categories. You can see property taxes last few years have gone up by kind of the most incrementally, and you can see use of money in property is one that has went up a good bit in 2023. It actually dipped down in 22, and that's a lot driven by most of the monies that are invested by the local government are very interest rate sensitive. So in 2022, actually, some of those had a very poor year, and then in 2023, with the rates being higher, those were up considerably. This is a little pie chart that just kind of breaks down the overall fiscal year 23 governmental fund revenues into different those same buckets of major revenue type, to get an encapsulation of the revenue that the county is bringing in from a governmental standpoint, how much of it is in each of these categories. And you can see that over half of the governmental fund revenues for fiscal year 23 are in the property taxes, and that includes real estate, personal property, public service taxes, all of those property taxes. And then other local taxes makes up the next largest bucket, and that would be like your local sales tax, your business licenses, your meals tax, the cigarette tax. Those are your local taxes, and so that's about 17%. And then intergovernmental is a relatively similar piece of that pie at about 15 to 16%. And intergovernmental, those are state and federal grants for governmental activities is really what those are comprised of. The next chart we have is a little line chart on governmental fund expenditures. We were looking at the revenue side, and now this is the expenditure side. And these, for local governments, these are over on the far right are the functions. That local governments break all of their expenditures down into one of these categories: general government, judicial administration, public safety, public works, health and welfare, culture, rec and community development, education, and then debt service. And you can see there the trend analysis related to these types of expenditures. This line chart does include capital projects. Those are governmental funds. So some of the dips from year to year or increases from year to year sometimes have to do with what's being expended from a capital project standpoint and what type of capital project that may relate to. The pie chart for governmental fund expenditures breaks down here on this slide, and you can see that education and public safety are the two largest pieces of that pie. Now, from education, that would be the amount that the county board of supervisors has provided to the school system to fund their share of those expenditures. The school system operates from monies provided by the county, as well as, they receive significant state and federal grant monies as well to support their budget. But, the monies spent on education from the county's governmental funds made up about 27% of all the expenditures for the county governmental funds, while public safety was about 25%. And then you can see the other breakdown of the different buckets there. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone on the board has at this time related to the audit and financial statements.
Any questions, comments?
I have a question, just out of curiosity. So the one slide where you break down property tax being 52% of our overall basically revenues, is that conducive for a successful town or county?
I mean, it's probably, I could get you through staff some kind of comparables for, we do a lot of local governments, so I can kind of get you some comparables to what the percentage of, similar sized governments, in different by population, for example. But 50% or so is not out of the ordinary for it. For most local governments, it is by far the largest, bucket, and they're probably going to fall very similar into this by which size. It's going to be local taxes typically second, intergovernmental, those grants are going to be third. I think the pie is going to look very similar in most counties in Virginia.
Yeah, that was I know that you deal with more than probably us, so I just want to see how conducive that was. So thank you.
Mr. Sullins?
Thank you for the presentation. I'm looking at, I think it's slide number 7, summary of fund balance and general fund. Those numbers, is that a rolling total? Does that mean that from 22 to 23 we added about $5 million of unassigned funds? Or does that mean in 2022 we had 34 million and in 2023 we had a new pot of 39 million?
No, this is these are cumulative.
Got it.
These are cumulative. So your overall general fund balance increased by about $5.3 million. And most of that went into that unassigned bucket.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Davis asked one of my questions regarding, is it normal for half of the budget to be from taxes? But what that chart doesn't break down with property taxes is it doesn't break down what part of that is from like the citizens' property taxes versus businesses' property tax. So commercial versus non-commercial, correct?
Okay, so yes, from a standpoint of real estate or personal property, residential versus commercial, that's not broken down, and you're not going to find that in the financial statements based on just how governments report financial statements. But that is something that either Treasurer's Office or Commissioner of Revenue probably could find that information for you to give some analysis. Yeah.
Okay, sir. And where do we get the items of noncompliance that were not reported? Understanding that there were, or there may be noncompliance items that are not required to be reported under the government audit standards?
So
in the report, your report states that, and I didn't know where we could find those at. That's what I'm asking. The noncompliance things that were, it's like on page 185.
So what that is trying to say is that our audit is not designed to find every instance of noncompliance. We're doing a financial statement audit, and during the financial statement audit, we design controls to determine whether the financial statements are materially correct. And in doing so, we will come across, internal control and compliance things that are required to be reported. So if we have anything we come across like that finding 2023-001, that is reported. We wouldn't not report something, in there. So, except like I said, there are things that don't rise to the level of reporting in here, like the timing of federal reimbursement requests that we reported separately in that management letter, but not in this report, in the government auditing standards report. And that has to do with materiality and things of that nature, you know, as to where those findings or comments or recommendations fall, whether they fall in the report or not.
All right, sure. Where's the letter at? Did you guys get the letter that he's referring to?
It was in one of our emails. It was.
Okay.
It's in the beginning. It's in the book, correct? If I remember right from the past.
I'm not sure how staff disseminated, those two communication. I know they're hyperlinked in the agenda. I saw that they were there.
Mr. Stroud, can we get that to Ms. Fish so she can get it to all of us? Make sure we have.
I'll get it to her. So we can make sure we get it.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Stroud?
I think all my questions have been answered, sir. So thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Ms. Bender, do you have any questions?
No, thank you as always.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Interim County Attorney, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to request y'all's discussion of a resolution by this board to leave the 16th planning district and go into the 17th planning district, which is the Northern Neck district. And so that is my explanation as county attorney. Now I'm going to put on my hat as senator, if I may. I filed a bill in the General Assembly to move you all from the planning district, which includes Fredericksburg, Stafford, Spotsylvania, Caroline, and go into the Northern Neck Planning District. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that they want to do a transportation authority up there. And this is the second year that we're discussing it, and they want King George essentially to pay taxes to build roads in the city of Fredericksburg. Some people will disagree with me on that, and I understand. But essentially, they want to include you all in that. And so that the biggest percentage of that money would go up there to build roads. But I won't carry that bill forward unless this board wants to move from one planning district to the next. Currently, King George is only in the bill. I have been asked by at least one member of the Caroline board to amend the bill to include them in it too. They would like to go into the Northern Neck Planning District with you all. But I don't have a resolution from that board yet. So it's my policy as a legislator, I never take anything forward unless I get a resolution from the board so that I know the board collectively agrees with it. And so that is put before you all for consideration tonight. And I'll try to answer any questions that I can.
So return to the members of the board for discussion. Ms. Bender.
Well, first, Mr. Stewart, I have a question about how will that affect, because we are part of quite a few agencies, including the health department that comes out of Fredericksburg. We do have a lot of citizens that use some of the services. I'm going to give Healthy Generations as an example, which is the area agency on aging. How does that affect those outside agencies and that are made up of Planning 16? Would we have to now use the Planning 17, outside agency? How does that work, especially with the health department?
Can I piggyback off another one? I think our elementary schools are tied, or our preschools are tied to the Fredericksburg as well. That's another one.
In the jail.
Yeah, the jail.
I can't answer all those questions right now. I can try to find those answers if you like, if you want to give me specifics. Typically, planning districts cooperate on different things, and you can be a part of them outside of being a member of the planning district, or you will be a member. I don't know that it cuts those off. It may potentially, and we can get those answers if you'd like. I guess the policy question is which one do you want to be a part of? Um, not to be flip about it. I can get you an answer on all those questions if you want, but I can't do it tonight.
Oh, I understand that. That was one question because I did reach out to some folks on both planning commission members. I also talked to Mr. Boyles, who's in the audience, who's the GWC executive director. I talked to a couple of my colleagues from the other localities. So I just want to make sure that we're fully going in, understanding the pros and cons. And I mean, culturally, we're a part of the Northern Neck. We're part of the Northern Neck Heritage Area. We're in the same river basin. We have the same watershed issues with the Chesapeake Bay and water conservation and the aquifer. It makes sense. A lot of the times, you know, sometimes I feel that you are right, especially the city of Fredericksburg wants us to pay for a lot of their things because they just don't have the land mass to be able to do some things. But I just want to make sure that we have all the facts before we agree, because it could affect our citizens, especially on the health side. That's where I'm really concerned about. And then also in education, we are just entering into this new agreement to create this regional high school that's tech oriented. Does that affect that also? So those were questions that I would like answered. Thank you.
Mr. Sullins?
Sir, you mentioned that the bulk of these taxes would be used for road projects in the Fredericksburg area. Do you have any idea, like numbers wise, like what would come back here? What's the benefit for King George for staying in that district?
Don't hold me to this, but I think it was a 60-40 split, where there would be additional new taxes to create a transportation authority. I'm not a big fan of transportation authorities because oftentimes what I see is the money goes to administration versus to actually going to tar on the roads. And so I'm just not a big fan of them. I think that 60%, I think you whatever was paid in, you get 40% back and 60% would leave King George County. And that was, it was a tax on deeds, and it was a tax on a couple other things that they proposed last year. Last year, I was able to defeat that bill on the Senate floor. I don't know that they've filed it again. Things are changing a little bit up there, and I see more issues coming down the road. And King George is more rural than they are. And I guess the question is, do you want to be, or you want to be in that area? And that is a question a lot of these jurisdictions are going to have to answer here in the very near future.
I was also told that.
Could you speak in the mic, sir?
Sorry, thought it was. I was also told that some of this funding will go toward road projects on I-95. Is that correct? Do you know?
I think they would like that to go. There's a major choke point right in the city of Fredericksburg, obviously. And so you got a lot of overflow onto Route 1 and other areas up there, which creates a lot of congestion. And the idea is to alleviate that. I'm not sure with the partnership with Transurban and the hot lanes that they can do that. They may hope to do that, but there's a very strict contract that actually Governor Kane entered into many years ago on these hot lanes projects. And it limits you pretty significantly as to what we can do as a Commonwealth, because they get to make money off of those lanes, hot lanes.
My concern there would be if we're paying money to alleviate traffic problems in Fredericksburg. A lot of times we know now that the bridge is a 4-lane bridge, and it's faster to go over. King George and 301 ends up being a bit of a relief valve for that. So we'll be paying money to relieve somebody else's traffic problems, but bring it here. So
that's one of my concerns as well.
Mr. Stroud?
I support Mr. Stewart's recommendation.
Mr. Davis?
I also support it.
So,
Mr. Chairman, you don't have to take action on it tonight. I can get the answers from Ms. Bender, and you can put it off till the next meeting, I think.
Okay. Well, things like the Rappahannock Regional Jail, we're entered into an agreement there. It doesn't really have anything to do with the planning district, and other things like that. And we have our own we have King George Health Department. We do fund some stuff in Fredericksburg, like the homeless shelter and some of those other things. That comes from King George money that we want to send there to help the people that come from King George there. But we need to determine pretty much here and now where we're going to be. Do we want to be in Fredericksburg, Stafford, Spotsylvania, and that's called Northern Virginia now, or do we want to be in the Northern Neck? So we're called the gateway to the Northern Neck. So if we're going to say that, we need to be that. When Mr. Stewart spoke of the transient tax and the deed transfer taxes and so forth, so 60% of money that's taxed here in King George would go to the Fredericksburg region for them to decide where they want to build roads, and we'd have little states over that, and we'd get 40% back. So, I mean, if you're going to go that route, you might as well do the 100% as in a transient tax where hotels, charge a transient tax and we get 100%, and then we could put that towards our portion of federal grants for highways and so forth to relieve the problems that we have going on here. I would be more likely to be in the 17th than the 16th by a long shot. It's the will of the board what they want to do this evening. There's 3 of us at least want to go forward. I don't know what your view is. You wanted some more information, and Mr. Sullins wants to go forward.
I just have one other thing. Since I've been part of FAMPO and GWRC for a while, one of the things that when Miss Senator McPike and Delegate Cole and Senator Durant came to our one of the last board meetings, I know personally, I basically told Mr. Senator Pike that, we didn't appreciate that he had been sponsoring this bill without even discussing any localities, whether we wanted it or not. And they came to an agreement that they would not push the bill forward this year when we'd have a committee that would come to June. June would be the cutoff date to discuss the funding formula, like the 60-40. Would that be different? Or what kind of tax would you have? Would it be added on sales tax? So these are discussions that we were going to put forth, but it is the will of the board if they want to not even have those discussions and just move to the other planning district. The other thing to consider too is smart scale, because the way smart scale is funded, to get anything really big, we have to have a local match. So we would have to figure out another funding source that we would be able to put in for that local match. And then lastly, we do not have a transportation planning department. So we do use GWRC to help us do transportation planning and do smart scale, because we do not have the staff in our community development that is able to help us, because these forms are very complicated and these applications. So I just wanted to put it out there.
So it's the will of the board to go forth, sir?
I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, the problem with smart scale is it's designed to give all the money to Northern Virginia. That's the way the bill was drafted, because that's where the most traffic is. David's not here anymore, and it's tough for us to get much money, but they've got all the votes. This is not a given that if the board adopts this resolution that this bill's going to pass. There's going to be substantial opposition to it by the folks you just not Senator Durant, but by others, because they want to include your money in the Fredericksburg region. So they're just not going to come along quietly.
So you have that drafted, that resolution?
I don't, but I can have it drafted very quickly. And the motion would just very simply be that the board requests to be moved from the 16th planning district. King George County requests to be moved from the 16th planning district to the 17th planning district, the Northern Neck planning district.
Is there a motion on the floor?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I would still like those questions answered.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Nay.
All right, Mr. Stewart, you can go ahead and draft that, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Appointments of member of the King George County Tow Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you all can do these in a block or individually, whichever you prefer. But you've got the opportunity to appoint members to the County Tow Board. And I think that the nominees we currently have are Captain Weston and Sergeant Davenport from law enforcement, Gil Kennedy as the citizen representative, Cave and McDaniel as the representatives from towing services. And those terms are 4 years. And again, you can move to appoint them in a block, or you can do them individually, whichever you prefer.
So we go ahead and this is not something the citizens need to have a big part in. So is there any motions?
I'll make a motion to accept the Captain Patrick Weston and First Sergeant Dylan Davenport for the law enforcement representatives, Mr. Gil Kennedy from the King George Citizen Representative, and Cave and McDaniel as the two representatives for towing services to the towing board for the term of 4 years.
And that motion is to adopt them all in the block.
Yes, to adopt them all in the block. Thank you for that correction.
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion?
What's the function of the towing board?
It's put up by the state, and there's certain rules that towing companies have to do. And this is the tow board that makes sure that the local tow companies and everybody has a piece in the pie for this, is what it is. Sheriff, you got more information? Yeah.
Back several years, we decided to do an ordinance for towing. And through that ordinance and with the state, we were required to do a board. And that board and the statute requires us to have that type of board where we have 2 law enforcement, a citizen representative, and 2 record drivers. That board governs that ordinance, whether it be tow rates or complaints on other record drivers, and they sit and basically govern the ordinance for King George County under the state statute.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
It's properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. (103) Approval of bylaws, rules and procedures, standard of conduct. Mr. Stewart.
And Mr. Chairman, again, we did not get those in time for the public to see them ahead of this meeting. We have made all the changes. You should have a red line copy for you to look at. So you may want to hold those for discussion or table them for tonight and vote on them at the next meeting, so everyone has a chance to go through them and make sure your will was done.
I'll make a motion to table them to the next meeting.
Motion's been made to table. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly second. Mr. Davis, second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Discussion approval interim county attorney contract. We already did that. Appointment of the Board of Rappahannock Regional Jail, RJJ Finance Budget Committee. In lieu of the county administrator, Mrs. Hahn, Director of Finance. Is there a motion? So the jail board has a finance leg to it, and Mr. Miller was on that. And so we need someone to be on that.
I'll make a motion to appoint to the Board of Rappahannock Regional Jail RRJA Finance Budget Committee in lieu of County Administrator for Director of Finance, Ms. Donna Hahn.
A second?
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, I have a question. Did Ms. Hahn agree to this? Has anybody asked her?
She said she agreed to it.
She did? Okay.
back there nodding their head.
Oh, thank you, Sheriff.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Discussion items, request for American Rescue ARPA funds for King George Animal Control Generator. Sheriff Giles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. And for the new members, congratulations. And I'm looking forward to the next 4 with you guys, working with you guys. So back in 2009, about 14 years ago, the new animal control shelter was built. Due to costs and budget constraints, a standalone generator was cut from that budget. When they were building the new courthouse, they needed to cut the power to the shelter. So when I went down and spoke to Jason Church, the director of it, he advised me that they had a little portable construction generator that they used to basically keep the lights on. There was no other facility, there was no other standalone generator to keep that facility running. And in that facility, that generator would need to run the grinder for the pumps, because when they clean the kennels, it goes into a sewage area which needs to be ground up and dispersed. It runs the lights, it runs 3 different HVAC systems, and it would also need to run the power washer that cleans the kennels. I've spoken to Branch Builders, who is building the courthouse, and they have graciously stated that they would donate the materials and the labor to build the pad for the generator. And then when the generator gets here, if I'm approved, they would be able to offload the generator and set it up into working fashion for the county, for the animal control. So having said that, and I do understand that this is a discussion items, but in the interest of efficiency, I would like to be able to request that this be an action item tonight so we can move forward with this project. So what I'm asking is the county to authorize, the board to authorize the county to transfer $41,941.69 from the ARP projects GL account to a new GL line to be set up for the animal control shelter GL, and issue a purchase order to Carter in the amount of $41,941.69.
Any questions? Sullins.
Sheriff Giles, the funding for this, that does not come out of the general county budget, correct?
If I put it in my budget, or if I put it in that budget for FYI or FY 25, it would.
But where does
I would have to wait.
Where does it come from now?
Where does what come from?
The funding.
ARP.
If we give
ARP, the ARP fund. That's what I'm asking for. I'm asking for the ARP money.
right, and that's fairly limited in what it can be used for, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
And it expires at the end of the year. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Ms. Hong, would you know if this fit under that provisions of the ARP fund?
Mr. Chair, I was going to ask Ms. Hahn to explain to the new members what the ARP fund is. And we've done this the whole time is when there's a need, because this money does have to be expended. This has to do with COVID-19 and the American Rescue Plan.
Yeah. So later in your packet and the meeting tonight, I am going to do a presentation on ARPA. But real quickly for the sheriff's benefit here is ARPA was allotted a certain amount to all the localities across the United States. And we received a little over $5 million. In the beginning, there was a complicated formula, but we still met what's called as revenue replacement. So under revenue replacement, they changed the law or the ruling that if you received less than $10 million, all of what you received could be considered to be revenue replacement, and therefore you can do any things that you normally would do under general budget. You just don't spend it on items that are recurring, because recurring items would need a recurring source of revenue, but one-time expenditures such as this would qualify for that.
Ms. Hahn, in the agenda meeting, said it was $288,000 left, but in the packet I saw it was probably $700,000.
and I'll go over that. But yes, there's some action items that need to occur at a future meeting that I'm going to explain in that presentation. But as of before we do those action items, it was 280,000 roughly. But
What will be the bottom line?
so that's, I don't have my presentation up in here in front of me, but I'm thinking it was in the range of, after we do some action items at a future meeting, we'll have a 700 and some thousand remaining.
Well, that,
And it has, things have to be encumbered, which means you can't just say we're going to do the project if by the end of this year, December 31st, 2024, we need to have a contract or a purchase order or something in place showing that we plan to spend those funds, and then those funds have to be expended by December 31st of 2026.
yes, ma'am. So I asked for you to get all the department heads ask what they wanted, and later on in the presentation is all here for the board. And the reason why I ask is that, you know, there's a big difference between 288 and 700,000. And so it'd be easier to prove the generator if it was 700,000 than it would be to be 288.
Well, I can tell you that one of the projects that needs to be returned to the ARP project line is 395,000 that was allotted for the Sidell Brooks Park restroom project. And that project, there is no way that we're going to meet that deadline of December 31st, 2024, because we need to wait. And I know engineering has left, but they have informed me that the water lines coming down in that area are not going to be ready for us to even put out for bid for that project. So those funds cannot be used for that project. So that's 395,000 right there.
Okay, thank you. So it's the will of the board. What would you like to do?
I think that it's going to save us some money. We already have, they're building the courthouse and they're willing to, that's going to save us thousands of dollars just laying it and putting the material out and not charging us for it and setting it up.
Right around 10,000.
Yeah.
10,000
I mean,
more.
we could push it down the load and put it in budget, and if we're going to paying someone to do that, maybe even more. We don't know exactly, because I would say that we move forward with it.
So what's the permit situation?
Permit?
Has there been a permit?
Yes.
Requested, issued, and
Requested,
approved?
issued. They were just waiting on some conduit to put under the cement before they poured the pad.
Okay. Mr. Stroud?
I'm continually amazed at the cost of things that the government pays for for things, but because the cost seems excessive. But at the same time, we need it. You can't have I can't believe we went this long without a backup generator already.
I'll take the last 4 years as my fault.
Notably blamed.
But I support it, sir.
Mr. Stroud? And Mr. Sullins? Ms. Bender?
Hey, I'm ready to make a motion. I'm going to make a motion to use the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds, for the King George Animal Control Generator from the Sheriff's Office. And it's a Sourcewell, and Mr. Stewart, help me because I'm just doing this motion off the fly, from Sourcewell D125 GC Cat Diesel Generator. You have a correction for me? Oh, do I need to put an amount?
To an action to transfer the funds from the ARPA project line over to a new GL line to be created for this in order to pay for it. And then the purchase order against that contract.
So I will withdraw my motion and so move from what Ms. Hahn has said. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
The recommended action.
All right, I'll do it then. Let me go back and I make a motion to transfer $41,941.69 from the ARPA Projects GL account to a new GL line to be set up for Animal Control Shelter GL.
And issue.
Oh, and then issue a purchase order to Carter in the amount of $41,941.69.
Thank you.
Second.
Properly second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So you got your generator. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Dines.
Mr. Stewart, here's the big one.
Mr. Chairman, so I've had a few preliminary discussions with some folks from Amazon. We were supposed to meet this morning in Richmond, and they were unable to make it there as a result of the snow and ice that we had from wherever they were traveling. So now on Friday, I'm supposed to have a meeting with allegedly the head of North American Economic Development, who has authority, and they're not going to bring people from the team who were here in King George. I will tell you that preliminarily they say that they are they were not very happy about the way things happened in King George and the way their team handled it in King George, and they said they were unaware of it. And they would like to discuss the things that are important to this board, and I'm trying to gather all those, and I will meet with them on Friday and report back to the board as soon thereafter as possible.
Thank you. So there was a reconsideration. The reconsideration was done. Is there a further motion necessary?
There is not. Mr. Chairman, we simply drafted a motion for the chair to sign and to record the votes as we do with everything. As the vote was reconsidered, so now that agreement just is kind of floating out there, waiting for you all to take action again either way, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I'm going to open this up for discussion.
Can you, that part you just said there about they weren't aware of how their team handled it.
What was reported to me that they were really upset by the fact that Amazon was viewed as being heavy-handed, which I think most of us in King George viewed them as being in this project. And that was not what they intended to do, and they would not have wanted it to be handled that way. And they'd like to talk to the county.
Can I interrupt the discussion for a moment? I think we need to move forward with that. Ms. Bender?
All right. I move to approve the resolution confirming the board's reconsideration and revocation of approval of the Amazon Economic Development Local Performance Agreement on January 2nd, 2024.
That's all. It's just keeping everything straight. So
There's a second. Any discussion on that? There'll be further discussion after that. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I said aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Okay, now please, I'll open it back up for discussion. Mr. Stroud?
Yes, sir. I'd like to thank you for reaching out to me concerning that, and I apologize for not getting you my comments back. So I do owe that. However, I like hearing that Amazon's leadership is acknowledging that they want to do better. So, and we want to present them with the opportunity to do better. So there were things in the performance agreement that were missing, specifically the requirements for Amazon to perform. So we're looking forward to seeing those and other things. So I appreciate, sir, your involvement, your willingness to take this on.
yes, sir.
Mr. Sullins, anything?
Yeah.
Mr. Davis? Yes, sir. Ms. Bender?
Yes, I do. So I want the public to hear. Sometimes you got to stand up to the big guy, and Amazon's not going anywhere. So I want everybody to hear that, those that were afraid. You guys sometimes stand up to the big guy, and I appreciate Mr. Stewart's help in getting him back to the table to make sure it's a good deal for King George. Thank you.
Thank you. Already, we are anxiously awaiting.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'll report back.
King George County Part-Time Senior Assistant to the Board of Supervisor, job description, Mr. Messler.
Good evening, Chair, Board. This was brought up in our work session by, I believe, using Mr. Collins. There was a little bit of back and forth with the board about it. We didn't land on any particular item on this, so I'm looking for, I guess, more discussion as to what this position is. It's not a funded part-time position. Is it a part-time position? Is it a contract?
So it would be a part-time position.
Okay.
And there's the job responsibilities. There's a couple fill in the blanks.
Okay.
Under the years of experience, I would want 20 years of experience as a chief administrative officer. And the reason why I want 20 years is I would want a part-time person that is either a retired county administrator or retired CEO or somebody that has that experience that could advise the board on what we need to be doing, and somebody that doesn't really need a job, somebody that wants to help. But I see that as we can work out the financial agreements. What's the bottom one? I can't read it.
Commit up to X hours.
Yeah, I would say 15 is my thing. But so I'm going to open up discussion to the board. Mr. Sullins.
I would be a little bit concerned with asking for 20 years, one, because of the cost, but two, because they're getting close to retirement at that point. And I would rather, yes, I want somebody with some experience and knows what he or she is doing, but I also would like for them to continue to be hungry and actually want to take care of us.
Well, so no, hold on just a minute, sir. So the reason why I said 20 years is because they would be retired from somewhere else. I don't really want somebody part-time that's given all their time to somebody else. So we have people in the community around that are retired that want to help, that have an unbelievable amount of experience and ability. That's why I wanted to put it at my interest is 20. But further discussion, Mr. Stroud.
I don't think that I'm hung up on the 20 years. I understand your concern, and I do agree with that part of it. I just don't know if 20 years is the right number. I think during the interview process, you could probably pick the best candidate if you put it at 15.
Okay.
And then if you had somebody with 20 years, then they'd probably get, ranked probably higher based on that. But I still see that at the top, go back to the top of that, whoever, can you just go back to the top, please? Yeah, so it's got project coordinator. There's no project or program management requirement in there. And in talking to, Ms. Hond and I talked to different people, what's really missing is ability in the county and in our leadership that really understands program management to include project management. They're not the same. And the county has a number of projects which are managed by a program or as a program. And the person that manages the program is a program manager. And the program manager manages the project managers who are managing what they're doing. And if those project managers are trained and supervised well, then that takes care of our accountability. It takes care of a lot of the other problems that we have right now with the budget, with identifying what's required, and really with sustainment and the things that are going on at the service authority where people aren't even, greasing things. So they're breaking because they're not properly maintained, because there's not supervision. It goes back to that program management, and that's missing. So I think that should be a part of it.
Mr. Davis?
I think is this part-time, is this a temporary position? Is that we're looking at this as? Is this going to be?
It's not full-time, it's part-time. I would imagine it would not be long-term.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's we're going to replace this with someone else.
No.
No.
So say that again.
It's just basically it's a short term that we're using.
So there's 3 new people. There's 5 of us all together. And to get us our feet underneath us for the new board to go forward with all the incentives that we said we wanted to do.
Right.
It's just someone that has a ton of experience. We want somebody with a ton of experience. We don't want, somebody out of college. I'm just saying, I'm not against those coming out of college, but we want somebody with a ton of experience that has walked these paths, that can, give us advice. And we can set the hours, we can set the rate, and we can set what we want on there. So if you want program manager, that's fine. If you want 15 hours, that's fine. But I'd like to come to some agreement tonight, if we can. Open it back for discussion.
So what?
Just give her a shot.
Sure.
One of the things I see this in the board, new members might not be aware, but there's a lot of former county administrators, former superintendents of schools. There's companies out there that do consulting fees, but they basically, they're retired, they get a pension, they don't want to do it full time anymore, but they go out and they offer their services or are willing to help communities decide their path, come up with mission, value, goals, or with us trying to figure out what's going on, a path forward, and making sure that we go out and hire the best county administrator that's for King George and not just do it quick and fast. So I see this position as someone who has experience to help us, that's been in the trenches and would help us come up with a path forward based on their experience. And they probably don't want to be full-time because they're probably retired.
Mr. Stroud.
So I was thinking this was a temporary fix until we had a county administrator. What you're saying is that's not the case?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that pretty much is the case.
Okay, so it's a temporary fix. So then you have my support with that. I would also offer up that if you're going to do a part-time, if you're looking at part-time and everything that was just discussed, then you don't even have to have one. You could have 2. If you're paying part-time hours, you could have 20 hours for 2 people that have one of them has more experience with service authority and one has more experience with another area, is what I'm saying. It's almost like using a board of advisors or something.
So would the board be willing to start with 1 and see how it works? And it's it's temporary. It's going to be at will. So if you don't like it, you can.
And as a part-time, that they don't draw benefits.
No, nothing.
Right. Concur.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, does the board want to include maybe significant experience with sewer systems, since that seems to be an issue for King George right now?
I'd be more than happy to
With water and sewer.
Just a thought.
Water and sewer operation, that's probably a better.
Or you may want to include something about somebody with experience at that, because that is a big issue for the county right now.
So if we include that, is there any motions anywhere? Mr. Sullins?
We filled in the blanks at the bottom there. I think we agreed that 20 years thereabout. I retract my concern earlier. I think you brought a good point. But what about the willingness to commit how many hours a week? If we're asking them to attend board of supervisors, board of directors meetings, that's going to take up a chunk of change right there.
I don't really want them to attend the meetings.
Okay.
We just need we just need someone that has a ton of experience to give us advice, and we don't need to send them out every night, come into these meetings when we can get the information from them and put it out there. So you can cross that off if you want.
Well, they'll need to attend some meetings. I mean, you made the point earlier that one of their roles is to help us, the new board, get our feet under us and to legally have that mentoring session. Unless he's going to do a whole lot of one-on-one stuff, we need to do some of it here, but we need to quantify that and be careful not to overtax, his or her time so that they're spending all of it here with us and not actually doing the administrative role. That makes sense.
Yes, sir. So let's put all this together. Well, you can go up to a 20. You can do whatever you want. You're up to. That means that they might not put in that much, but they can go up to 20 hours at 15 years.
Mr. Chair, will you be basically approving his time?
Will I be approving his time?
Right.
Well, I would be, as chairman, I would be signing off, but
right,
you would have the exact same information I have.
So, and I agree with you. I wouldn't see them needing to be at these meetings unless it was requested. But I wouldn't want to waste time. I'd rather be working. But I think what we could do is identify, not now, but during the interview process or something, identify a period on a day. Maybe it's 5 hours on Thursdays or whatever, where they will be in the office and we know they're going to be there. So we would have access to them in that regard.
So as a board, we can work that out with this person or persons.
Correct.
So during the interview process, we can give specifics, just like brought up about the water authority.
I would let them make the recommendation.
Okay. Is there a motion? Anyone?
You're looking for a motion?
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion, or if you want to try it, Mr. Stroud. All right, I make a motion to properly advertise for the King George County Part-Time Senior Assistant to the Board of Supervisors with the job description that Mr. Metzler provided with our changes. And I guess is that enough, Mr. Stewart?
Is there a second?
Second.
Properly second. Any more discussion?
Did Mr. Metzler have anything to add?
Just so to clarify, you clarified the title, which was a question that I did have since we had a few up there. We're doing 20 years of experience. Part-time roles with King George County can work up to 29 hours. So you have flexibility.
15 years was the consensus, okay, and up to 20 hours was the consensus.
Okay.
And
then
remove, what do you want me to remove, Mr. Stroud?
Attendance at BOS and BOD meetings.
Yes, remove that.
And if I'm hearing you all correctly, this is going to be, this position will be in place until we get the new county administrator. So am I assuming we're going to be using the salary from the county administrator to fund this role, or are we doing this as a brand new role and need funding?
So at this point, we're going to be getting out of the general fund. The term that we agreed on is for to help us till we get a county administrator, and then the board will decide if there's any necessary after that.
Perfect.
So it's just a temporary part-time position. It's been seconded, right? Okay, any more discussion?
Yes, I just want to make sure you had mentioned the general fund. Do we have that all classified? To make sure that we have the funds available and where it's coming from. I just want to make sure for transparency to the public.
We have funds available.
If you're going to use general fund, are you going to charge it to the current county administration budget, or are you going to want to transfer funds from the general fund balance into the county administrator budget to cover this position? And if so, we need an action and a dollar figure to transfer.
Okay. What's the will of the board? Mr. Stewart, do you have any?
I don't disagree with Ms. Hahn, except I don't think you need that until you hire somebody.
Sir?
I don't disagree with Mrs. Hahn, but I don't think you need that until you hire somebody. Once you've hired the person and determined what you're going to pay them and what the terms are, then you can take that action. That basically is just moving money from one category to another.
Mr. Stroud?
Well, the other thing, I don't think we should set the rate of pay here. Whenever you perform the interviews, if you have two candidates and they're both well qualified, but one of them's willing to accept less money, that's the one who gets the job.
So how about no more than $85 an hour?
How does that compare with the other people or other counties in the area that have similar responsibilities and size and scope?
We have a county attorney that the rate for trial is $250 at discount. So I don't think that we should pay a part-time person $250 an hour. I think that you put it out there and see what you get.
I think that pays still pretty high. That would come to $176,800 just in salary.
A year.
A year, right,
It's not going to be a year.
right.
Let's say 4 months. How much is that?
I still think it's high for somebody who's retired that you're talking about. They're getting supplemental income, but
You want to make that negotiable?
correct. I think that's a better way of looking at it.
Okay. Negotiable.
Put an upper and lower bound on it, because while this should be a short-term thing, we're also setting the precedent for the person who's coming in interviewing for full-time to point back and say, well, you gave that person this, what I mean.
Well, I'm pretty sure the county administrator would get making more than $85 an hour. You know?
It's overpaid.
Okay. So it's properly second. Any other discussion? Been properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Your vote's aye. Thank you. Please advertise it. County website and other professional forums.
Sir.
Next one is county administrator job description. So I think you did a good job on the one that I saw, the main one.
This one?
So
Yes, that one.
through your work session, we gathered some details as to kind of what you all were looking for. I did, through my HR staff and then also with the help of Miss Amy Southall, put it more in what I would consider a professional context for going out and advertising. This is, again, a draft form. Kind of I like having some more discussion about this. I have some questions for you all, specifically around the qualifications. When we post something, we post them with qualifications, and this is what, as an HR professional, when we look at jobs and we look at applicants coming in, we bounce them off the minimum qualifications, basically. Now, if somebody comes in with higher qualifications, then they at least pass the first benchmark, but if they don't come in with at least these minimum qualifications, they generally don't move forward. So I want to have a discussion around qualifications, because that wasn't something we brought out in our work session discussion. I believe I got some of those other points in there that you all brought out, but specifically around this graduation from an accredited four-year college or university with a public degree in public administration, political science, civil planning, business management. There's a lot of degrees out there that it could, or a closer to the related field, or to try to give us some leeway, I put in there equivalent training and experience, master's degree. Does any of that sound?
So I like the qualifications. They're broad enough but close enough to where we want to go. So the board discussed that all the applications will be addressed to the board, and we will go through them. So if there's 20 applications, we will call them. The staff won't call them. It's going to come straight to us. Okay.
So if somebody comes in just with a technical diploma, I guess equivalent training, 5 years of experience as a maintenance worker or whatever, do you want those to go through, or do you want only the people that bounce off this qualification to go through?
We want the board was that we want to call them all.
Okay. So put in there a minimum of 5 years experience in senior local government executive management or experience and training to show progression towards senior executive role. Your Virginia experience is highly preferred. Does that 5-year mark and work in a senior role? I mean, basically what I have there, does that work for you all to post out there publicly?
Let's get through it and then we'll get to discussion and we'll see what needs to be modified.
So we got the Virginia experience highly preferred. That was one of the work session comments. Demonstrating success in project management. Mr. Stroud is obviously making it a note, a priority to make sure we have some project management experience. I didn't put in there a specific certification to have with PMP. We're not seeing those quite yet in this arena. Those are going to be coming in the next generation of county administrators, where you start seeing the PMPs and things like that. But those who might meet this qualification or have years of experience generally aren't going to have a PMP. They'll have project management experience, but they won't have that certain certification. So I just left it general there because I thought everybody's consensus was put what we want, but make it general too, so we have leeway. Leadership, economic development, financial, and utility management experience is what we're looking for. Demonstrated ability to integrate into a community. One of the things that I heard from you all is you want this county administrator to make King George home. So if they've done this in other places, they should be able to say, hey, how they're going to make this home, demonstrate their willingness to become part of the community. And then county residency is required within 90 days of appointment to the position. Again, take our work session as a suggestion. So those are what I gleaned so far from our discussions for qualifications.
Just hang tight and we'll get some discussion going here. Does anybody need to add anything?
Yes.
Okay, one at a time.
Well, first of all, I wanted to bring out so I was here in the last round. I was here also for GWRC, and we did use another firm to do it, whether you like them or not, but they did put together a nice profile. And Ms. Fish and I were trying to find the King George one, but could not. I have found it at home yesterday, the original one that we had, but we did find the Frederick County, Virginia one, which is pretty nice because I just felt like that one was, you did a good job, but it was like filling space. There needed to be more substance to it. And one of the things I liked, in this packet, they have a position profile at the end of it, and there's just a little more meat to it. And so when I found the original one, I also found the document that this firm did, a recruitment profile, and it had a lot more information in it. And where I'm going to go one at a time is I'm going to go to the section that has qualifications, education, and experience. And it had a bachelor's degree in public administration, business management, planning, or a related field, and a master's degree is preferred. That was one. Another one is 5 years of successful leadership at a senior local government executive management level in an organization with comparable responsibilities, possessing a broad skill set appropriate to the breadth of county government operations, local government experience in Virginia as a manager, deputy, or assistant. Comprehensive knowledge of the principles and practice of public administration, local government finance, local and regional planning, and subdivision development, and the statutory authority and requirements of county government. A demonstrated commitment to ongoing professional development through participation in organizations such as the International City and County Management Association, ICMA, and the Virginia Local Government Management Association, VLGMA, designation or progress towards designation as ICMA credentialed manager, and then any combination of education and experience that qualifies an applicant may be considered in lieu of the more specific criteria. Now, with also that, they also had a section for personal traits and desired characteristics, performance expectations, and then compensation and benefits. And then the other thing they also had that I liked, and because King George has challenges, they had a section that was very honest and upfront about the challenges and what they would expect us coming in, so nobody was blindsided. So I wanted to put those things out. I can have Ms. Fish make copies of this because I just found some of this in my own archives, so we just couldn't find it on the website or in the archives here.
Mr. Sullins?
Ms. Fish just sent us the King George County Administrator profile. I think that probably is hopefully what you're reading from, because there's no way I'm going to remember what you just said. But I did like the verbiage. What I heard sounded good. But you were taking notes. You got all that down, right?
I do have a copy. Ms. Fish sent me a copy, so I was following along with what you wrote up. So,
Mr. Stroud?
Yes, sir. The word project to program. Then the third bullet down, success in program management.
Change it.
and minimum of 5 years as you've got it with an overall 15 years. The 5 years is in the senior level, local government, executive management, but an overall minimum of 15 years experience, excluding college. So it doesn't include their time at college.
Mr. Davis?
I have no comment. Yeah, I think it looks good. I think that what has been discussed are great options. I'm not going to pile on to that.
So what's the will of the board? Move forward,
Does it need a motion?
but we need to make sure he's clear on what he's putting out there.
How about we have Mr. Metzler type it all up and bring it to the February 1st meeting, so, because then it can be in the board packet and.
So let's take 5 minutes, send it through, all of us got it. But, you know, every day we're going here, we're without a leader. Unfortunately, the law says that when you don't have a county administrator, your board chairman is your county administrator. Do you all want to keep that going? I would guess not.
Mr. Chair, then I believe that if we make these edits, we post the position.
Sir?
After we make the edits, after the edits are made, then we post the position.
Yes, sir. So you want to take 5 minutes to make sure that he is clear? A 5-minute recess?
I was going to suggest that, because then we could have them add these things and then print a copy. Mr. Metzler, could you print a copy if I gave you this sheet and you have what also was recommended, retype it up in maybe 10 minutes to be able to bring it back to us?
10 minutes.
Well, the thing is you can always edit after you post it too, if you needed to, but it could be challenging with people that apply in between. But
Can I, so we're going to take 5 minutes, let him get that. And then we'll read it out loud to make sure it's clear. And then we'll go from there. If not, then you're going to have to start paying me a stipend to be the county administrator. And I get paid more than $85 an hour, by the way.
Yeah, that's ask the question. Are you clear on what we're asking for? Are you confused? That's all I want to know.
So Ms. Bender said, and she read off to you a few things from
Okay.
this other advertisement that we've had in the past.
Right.
She read about half of it. I've gotten Mr. Sully over here that says, yeah, that sounds good. I've got recommendations to change this up here.
Mhm.
So I don't have a full rule like you guys aren't fully on board as to what to go forward. I can copy and paste what we have in this old advertisement, add it to the qualifications section, add it to personal traits section, and then modify my benefits and compensation section and go if that's the will of.
Yeah, the only thing I hear is that she has some things that she wants to add, and so we add them.
Yeah.
He has some things that he wants to add. Oh, if we know what those things are, then I don't know what's stopping us from moving.
Okay, so we're going to take 10 minutes and see you in 10 minutes.
So you want me to go type this up and bring it back to you guys?
I would hope that you can cut and paste from what Ms. Fish gave you.
Can I make a recommendation?
Yes, sir. You want to pass them?
No, I was going to say.
Pass this and move on to.
No, I was going to say, instead of taking a 10-minute break where we're all sitting around looking at each other, can we put him on pause, let him go do his thing so he's not under pressure, and
That's
then
what
we
I said.
continue on?
That's what I said.
No, but we continue on with the rest of the agenda?
Yes. That's what I just said. You want to
All right,
continue
sorry,
on?
that wasn't what I heard, but thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, you go ahead and do your thing and we'll move on. ARPA funds, I would like to take a 3-minute break. I'm old. I have to go to the bathroom. Okay, thank you. Thumbs up back yonder. Thank you. We are now back in session. The next thing on the list is ARPA funds. Department request, Ms. Donna Hahn, Director of Finance.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. At last week's agenda meeting, Mr. Collins asked me to put together some information on possible projects. He talked to all the department heads. And before I did just that piece of it, I wanted to do a little presentation, and we've already hit on some of this information earlier when we talked with the sheriff. But I wanted to let you all know that we here in King George got two different allotments of money, installments of $2.6 million for a total of $5.2 million. Revenue replacement calculations were completed to determine if our allotment met the guidelines, which it did. And then later it was simplified to state that anything under 10 million qualified for revenue replacement. As I mentioned earlier, revenue replacement allows governments to utilize funds for a variety of expenditures that would be normal government operations. All funds received by the county must be obligated by December 31st, 2024 and paid by December 31st, 2026. Recent guidance defines obligated as an order placed for property and services and entering into contract subawards and similar transactions that require payment. Any unobligated funds as of December 31st, 2024 must be returned to the federal government. I just wanted to put this in there. I'm not going to go over all these projects, but this right here is a list of the projects that have been completed over the last couple of years, such as the Treasurer's Office renovation. We replaced the HVAC unit in this building for the upstairs, ADA accessible playgrounds, security cameras at the schools, so a variety of different projects. These are the projects that funds have been allotted for that haven't been spent. As you can see, the new ERP is one of those there, and the funds have been encumbered for that under a purchase order for that, as well as a contract. And one thing I didn't get on here, the Parks and Recs, the infill groomer, that has actually been paid for, so that should go over to the other list of completed projects. Over at the end, you'll see that I put the amounts over there that were budgeted but have not been obligated, so you could see that as well. Then the staff provided me with a abundance of projects that they would like to see done, and that's for your review and any direction that you might want to take on that, or it could be included in the budget work sessions. We could have a discussion at maybe one of the first meetings to disseminate some of this. I will tell you that the top one on there was the generator for the animal control shelter. And that one, so if you take all those amounts less that top one, that is $722,404 in project requests.
What's the number you said about the 700,000 earlier?
I'll get to that in just a moment. So currently, unobligated funds are $229,291. On that completed projects spreadsheet, there was a total of $223.35 that needs to be returned back to the project line. I will bring a future action item to do that. We also have not paid the final $150,000 payment to the broadband, but it has been committed. It hadn't been obligated by the guidelines, but it has been committed in a letter to, I believe it was to the Northern Neck Regional Commission or something in the Northern Neck, and that was obligated a couple of years ago. And I mentioned the Sedell Brooks Park restroom project, due to the water and sewer lines project will not be under contract prior to December 31st. We will need to return the $395,000. There's $55,000 that remains in the preschool feasibility study after work is complete. This needs to be returned to the project line as well. We need to closely watch the Opticon project, and for those who might not know, that's to get the public safety vehicles that's on those stoplights so that the light will change for them so that they can go through. Ms. Chief Moody had a $26,587 placed into a contingency line. And if all goes well, that contingency line will not be needed and can be transferred. He is still waiting on VDOT, I believe, on some information before we can move forward with completing that project. So with that said, at the time I did this presentation, there was the 702,000, but I redid the calculations after you take out the money for the generator. It's $664,159.68. Additionally, we have the Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Fund. This was another separate bucket of money. It was the smaller bucket that the former board had asked staff to apply for, and we were given that in 2 allotments of 50,000. So we have 100,000 that hasn't been used out of that money. So added to the 664, that would be 764. And like the ARPA funds, these funds may be used for any government purposes under the revenue replacement guidelines. And like I said, they're in addition to the remaining funds. And here are some of the references that you can take a look at. Is the Department of Treasury website, and that's where you'll see the guidance and the final rule on the ARPA funds. And then the Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Funds, there's a link to that and the guidance on that as well. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
All righty, thank you. So we have a list in front of us, possible uses of ARPA funds. With the list in front of us, is there anybody have a red line item?
Mr. Dines, can you go back, since I don't have my tablet, can you go back to the, thank you. I do, Mr. Chair. From my understanding, for the last 2 years, there's been a budget item put in to upgrade this boardroom. And from the last meeting on January 2nd, where we had issues with the audio portion, I think we owe the citizens, because a lot of people now watch us so that they can be part of the community. We need to make the repairs to upgrade this boardroom so that the citizens don't have audio and visual problems and actually can be part of government.
That's not a red line item.
All right. Oh, to take out, sorry.
Mr. Sullivan, do you have any red line items? Mr. Davis?
I do not.
Mr. Stroud?
I don't right now.
All right.
Thank you.
I did also mark on there, added a separate column on that for items that would have to go out for a bid. And so those are estimated costs for those. Those could come in higher or lower as well, depending on what the bids come in.
And you're referring to the column on this sheet here, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
So the things I would like to see would be the upgrades to this boardroom. And the middle school demolition. I don't know why it's 60,000, but
that is not for the demolition. That is for the architect to prepare contract documents for the demolition.
it costs $60,000 to prepare a document to say tear it down.
That's what engineering provided me, that number.
Okay. And the FOIA, I'd like to see that stay in there, the Civic Plus contract one-time fee. That's my 2 top ones. But we'll go for discussion on the next board meeting. Mr. Sullins?
So this won't be popular by everybody that made this list, but I have to at least ask the question, would it be practical, feasible, acceptable to use this money and try to add a couple of classrooms to the schools where kids are learning in trailers?
I don't think that we can use it for that, Ms. Hahn.
You can use it for the schools as well as county operations, anything that's falls under county operations. I would say that you're talking about to build classrooms onto the school. Mm-hmm. that's going to be a larger scale project that engineering would have to be involved. So I couldn't answer all of those questions for you, but I'm thinking the cost is going to be quite a bit more than.
It may be, but that's just something I'd like to at least look into. I mean, we have kids in trailers learning right now, and we've used some of the money, looks like already, to renovate office space. And if we can get a classroom or two added, to whichever one of the schools is the most overcrowded, maybe that would be a better use of it than renovating things that are already in existence.
So you're talking about another trailer, or you're talking about a hard building?
Something more permanent. Just add a structure on, I don't know if it'd be a full wing, but at least add some classrooms.
Well,
Permanent, yeah.
so not to put a fire on the dream, but this amount of money wouldn't even cover a classroom add-on. So, minimum amount, if you want a couple of classrooms, is going to cost you $28 million.
Classrooms?
For 2 classes, it probably costs you about $3, $4, $5 million. So
You can build a heck of a house for $700,000.
I know, me too. Or garage. But anyhow, all right. Anything else on this before we move on?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
Are there places like at the high school, and maybe our officer that's at the high school could answer these things, like places where there aren't cameras, where things take place right now that we don't see, that we would need those, like stairwells and things of that nature?
So, yeah.
So did the schools
like to come up and speak to that, please?
This, Ms. Hahn, the schools had their own ARPA money, is that correct?
No, they, in fact, if you.
I didn't see any of their projects on here.
Yeah, I don't see anything either. That's why I asked.
Yes, there are, like the.
On the possible use for the funds.
Not on the possible, because you asked department heads, but funds that we did, like the ADA compliance, I know it's here somewhere, the ADA compliant playgrounds.
So I guess we should reach out to the schools before we even go forth anymore.
Could you speak to that at all right now? And cameras could be useful in those areas you would.
Hold on a minute. If you're going to speak, come up to the podium so people at home can hear.
I do see that we
Deputy Shriver?
did some security cameras at 2 of the schools.
Well, I know we have some cameras, but I also know there's some gaps in that system, and some things go unnoticed.
Yeah, there's definitely in all the school buildings some locations that cameras could be added, but especially at the high school, updated some of the cameras, especially the exterior cameras.
Stairwells.
Yes, sir.
So if you could reach out to the schools so we can have a complete list, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I also want to bring out, because I'm in the schools, well, especially the high school and the middle school, and they do have some needs. And one thing I would like to see and ask Dr. Benson about is, and this was a mistake in the renovation. Or Dr. Benson, sorry, Dr. Boyd, sorry, old school, going back, way back. But the gymnasium, the old gymnasium where the cement pad is, that the doors get stuck, and I've always been concerned about the safety of getting out of that door. That might be something good to be able to use the ARPA funds to repair that. That should have been done in the renovations, but it was not. And then one other area is, I know the athletic director at the high school, there is in the bleachers there, there's an issue with the bleachers, and I think they were going to put it in the CIP to fix or retrofit those bleachers so that they properly move in and out. I mean, the schools, that's what they use revenue to help support their sports programs. So we should help them if they need some upgrades. And then also, I know that it will be coming, because I was told it's being evaluated, is the turf replacement. So that would be something. I don't remember the price they quoted, but the turf field is at its end of life.
So Ms. Hahn, again, could you reach out to the schools and, but just a note on the turf replacement, they're supposed to have a fund, and they've always supposed to have a fund to replace the turf. So if they don't have the money, they were supposed to have a fund to have that money. So if not, we need to find out what happened to the money. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
item 111, didn't we just do that? Mr. Stewart, Hopyard deed approval?
We need to have this body do that as well.
Okay.
So we would need a motion to accept that deed. I can explain it again if Mr.
It's okay.
Stroud, he wasn't in here, I don't think.
Your motion?
Hold on one second. I want to clarify something because I was going to bring this up earlier. So I know during the board of directors, we approved the interim county attorney. Do we need to technically do that again? So
Yes,
we should
Ms.
both do them both at the same time because Mr. Stroud was not up here for that part. So it
Yes,
needs
Mr. Chairman, I was going to bring that up one at a time.
Okay, so is there a motion for that, for the county attorney?
Hold on, I gotta go back. Give me a second to find it.
You can just say that a motion to accept the county attorney contract as presented, the same terms as accepted by the board of directors.
Thank you. So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay,
So then
back to Hopyard.
I will make a motion to accept Hopyard Section 10 deed.
Is there a second?
As previously described.
Yes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Okay. So it looks like we're down to secondary public comment to address the meeting of business matters only.
Mr. Chair, I know Mr. Metzler has emailed all of us
Yeah, I don't,
fixed. Do we want it to,
can you read it out? Because I don't have,
can I have a copy rather than reading on my phone?
say we'll go back to that item.
Email. Do you have a printed out copy? Mr. Dines is gonna put it on the screen. We can quickly go over changes requested. This
The
is
one you
not
just
the,
sent me?
Thank you for doing that.
Why didn't I get it? I'm in my inbox and I just don't see it. I don't know why.
Mr. Metzler, is the organization, did you update some of those figures from,
these are, the organization has been updated.
okay, I just wanted to make sure.
And copy. That was previously in what I
In
had
the
on
document.
screen. That was all updated. Page 2 qualification, education, experience is where I took the information that you had given, incorporated that in with the information that I had previously, and then received up here. So I added to qualifications, education. We added the personal traits and desired characteristics from the past also. And then the section performance expectations, compensation and benefits is mainly the same, just reworded to a different style. So we can go over those. Would you like me just to read through those and go over those for you all?
We can read.
Okay.
I think we're fine. We can read them.
Okay.
Do we need a motion or do we just need direction?
We need a motion.
All right, I will make a motion that we accept the county administrator profile that has been reworked and presented here after making it look pretty. We ask that it be posted for filling, I guess would be. Is that okay, Mr. Stewart saying?
I think it's sufficient to just say that we'll accept the description as presented to the board.
Thank you. I'm used to those long motions, so.
Okay, and is there a second?
I have an edit.
Okay, is there a second first? Then we'll get there.
Second.
Second, any discussion, Mr. Stroud?
Second bullet,
Sir.
where it says 15 years total local government experience is preferred, Virginia experience highly preferred. I know I made the recommendation earlier, but that's not the way I had intended it. I just simply meant 5 years of, just 5 years with a total of 15 years of experience. So And it's, the first one is senior local government executive management, but it's just with a total of 15 years of management experience. Does that make sense?
So take out the local government experience. Just
Right, it's just, and with
management.
a total of 15 years, right?
And so, Mr. Chair,
Is there amendment?
Mrs. Bender might want to withdraw her motion, I think, if you're going to continue to work on it.
Okay. You want to withdraw?
I'll withdraw my motion. I just want to make sure we make it a Virginia experience.
Okay, so just make sure, all we gotta do is fix that bullet point. I'm
sorry, I didn't hear you, sir.
I said we just want to fix that one bullet point to,
15 years of total management experience is preferred.
Correct.
And somebody else has to make the motion since.
motion? Sir?
Ms. Bender can make a new motion.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So I make a motion to accept the profile created for the county administrator position and to post it.
And you may want to just include, go ahead and advertise for the.
And advertise the position.
Is there a second? Probably second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. And could you put that on the county website and all other mediums?
Yes, sir.
Um,
A list of where I can spread it out far and wide.
Yeah, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff, Miss Southall does.
South Hall, yeah, they'll go on the county website. They'll go on Indeed. We'll be putting it on ICMA, NACO, VML, VACO, LinkedIn, and then all of our socials, Facebook, Twitter, etc.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. All righty. Down to the last item on the agenda. Is there any public comment? Comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person. In order to afford everyone the opportunity to speak, please provide your full name and district when submitting your public comment so that it can be properly included in the public record. Is there any public comment in the room? You're not the public.
Oh, Christopher Clark, James Madison District, also Director of Parks and Recreation. Just for clarity for you all, as you look at these ARPA funds, because I have a lot of lines on there.
You can't do both.
It's my public comment, sir.
It's you're one or the other. No, sir. So you can't have another shot at the.
I just want to explain it so that when you go back to look at it.
Did you hear what I just said, sir?
Wait, hold on. Mr. Stewart, can he legally give public comment?
Again, not as a director of the Park and Recreation. He can give his opinion as a citizen.
I think it's up to the prerogative of the chair. You've not adopted your new, but it's typically always up to the prerogative of the chair. And you've not adopted your new procedures yet.
But you can make a comment as a citizen.
Okay, sir. Well, as the way they are described, in my understanding from Parks and Recreation, the items from zero turn mower to citizen center lobby seating are included in the department's budget, their operating budget for fiscal year 25, and that's why they are listed here as ARPA. The citizen center LED sign is a separate item, not included in any budget at this time. And then the items from security camera system for Citizen Center down through the end of Parks and Recreation are included in the Citizen Center renovation capital improvement plan item, which will be submitted for fiscal year 25.
Thank you. Anybody else that's not an employee of the county? Anybody online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll close public comment. Motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the Board of Supervisors to Tuesday, February 6, 2024 at 5:30 PM in the Robert H. Combs Boardroom.
Okay, there's
second
reconvene for the work session.
Yeah,
I know, we're going to deal with it. But that's the next.
Right, but I don't have a date to make that motion.
Wednesday.
I don't know if we're going to.
Do next Wednesday.
We can't do next Wednesday. There's a conflict with our. I would like some clarification on that because I'm not going to adjourn to a board meeting that's not going to occur. Somebody else wants to make the motion.
So you're supposed to
more than
adjourn the meeting to the next scheduled board meeting, which will be next Wednesday. And then.
But that was for a
if that
work.
meeting gets canceled, then you go to the next meeting. So you're supposed to go, Mr. Stewart, isn't that correct? In Robert's rules, you're supposed to go to the next scheduled board meeting?
Typically, you would adjourn to the next meeting, and that gives everybody notice of what you're doing. So if you plan on having a work session next Wednesday, the 24th, then it would be appropriate to adjourn to that date. My understanding.
Somebody else make the motion.
Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn to February 2nd to the next scheduled board meeting.
February 6th.
February 6th.
So
I'll second that.
Okay, too, if you want.
I think, isn't that parliamentary? Who's that parliamentarian? You, Mr. Stewart? Okay, so what's your decision?
Mr. Chairman, I thought you should have adjourned to your work session. My understanding.
Okay.
The challenge, sir, is that the work session, for the purpose that was described earlier, can't happen. Now, we can have a work session on something. It's just we would need to change the purpose of the work session.
Well, if you're not going to have a work session, then you would adjourn to your next meeting.
And that's what
Ms. Bender said.
Right.
So anyhow, let's start all over again. You made a motion. Was it properly seconded? Anybody want to second her motion?
Second.
Properly seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Chair votes aye. We're now adjourned.